belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence. Spend our life searching for the sense of belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence.
Anxious Earth is rising. Anxious Earth is rising. I'm so happy.
We spend our life searching for the sense of belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence.
Oh, hey, Double Triple Channel. This is Double Triple Channel. My name is Ron. I live in rural New Hampshire, surrounded by forests, wild animals. Sometimes I stream about the animals. Sometimes I stream about movies, movie reviews. Today we're doing science, I guess. Pseudoscience. No, not pseudoscience. Hopefully we're doing this right. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is a live recording. It was recorded on February 19th, 8:30 Eastern Time, approximately, is when we're starting here. And it's even on the video here, we've got a UTC time, which is close to within a couple seconds, I think. So, of course, there's a delay in the broadcast. So, let me, first thing I do on this thing, if you're watching on the VOD here, feel free to skip ahead, right? You know how that works, right? If I may not be talking about what you clicked on this video for, so you might have to search through the video to find exactly what you want. But it'll be worth it, right? It should be. But before I get started, I got a ritual I do at the beginning of the stream, where I make sure that my voice is matched up with the audio. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to clap and see if it syncs up right with the audio. All right, I think that's close enough. I have a little bit different setup today because I'm going to do math. Maybe I'll do that first, and then we'll get into the AI stuff later. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe I'll do that first. I don't know. But I actually streamed just a couple days ago, I think, or yesterday, a couple days ago, I forget. And usually it takes me about a week to get back on again. But it was warm today. It got over freezing outside, and it was sunny all day. And so I opened up the drapes and let the sun come through the windows, and it warmed up in here pretty good. It's 11.7 degrees right now in this room. That's pretty warm. That's C, of course. Science stream, right? I'm not going to use Fahrenheit in the science stream. What are you talking about? So outside, it's probably, I don't know, my thermometer's broken here, right, that I have in here, my outdoor remote thermometer. It's probably about 7 or 8 or something outside and dropping. It got pretty cold last night. Not below 0 Fahrenheit, but down to maybe 12 degrees C, minus 12 C, something like that. I don't know. All right, so let's two things I want to do. One was to talk about AI consciousness and the effect on business when that happens. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the moon. I was in a chat. I forget exactly where I was now. But they were in the chat. They were talking about how the moon might affect. It's this for a long time, right? This has been a thing, right? Does the moon affect people, or somehow when there's a full moon or whatever, and people turn into wolfmen's and or whatever, you know what I mean? It's a long history of the moon affecting people, right? And so I wanted to get into that a little bit. But when I was in this chat, that came up somehow or something. God, I wish I remembered where it was. But anyway, somebody typed into chat. They said, "Well, they said, well, it affects the tides, and it does, right? The moon, big effect on the tides, right? The moon and the sun, but the moon, I think, mostly. And so if the moon can affect the tides, maybe it can affect people." And somebody typed into the chat. They said, "Well, people are 80% water or 75% water, or whatever it is, So the moon must affect us because we've got water." And I said, no, that's not how gravity works. It doesn't have to be water. It just has to be mass for gravity to affect something. But the thing is, how much of an effect? And I remember hearing years ago, somebody was thinking, well, maybe that, there's a whole thing with astrology and where the planets are when you're born or something, as the gravity of the planets affects or something. But when you figure it out on the planets, it's a tiny little bit. Maybe we'll figure that out too. Maybe we'll figure out, say, what the largest planet is, Jupiter. So maybe we'll figure out today how much effect Jupiter's gravity has on people. And I wanted to for sure figure out how much effect the moon's gravity has on people. But it doesn't matter how much water you have. You could be a rock, right? The Earth is a rock. And it still affects it. A lot of planets are rocks, or just gas, or whatever. It doesn't have to be water. It just happens that the ocean is made of water, and it has a lot of mass, so it gets affected by the moon. But there are a lot of other effects that the moon has too. The other day I was out. Oh shit! I didn't load up that IRL. Well, maybe I have it here. Maybe I did it. Hang on just a second. I took a video, or basically an audio. It was at night, and I took an audio of the coyotes out here, and they were a long ways away too. They must have been a couple miles away. But after the moon came up, they just started howling and howling. It was a full moon. So it was about a couple weeks ago, I guess. And so I recorded it, but I didn't. I don't know if I put it here or not. I don't think I got it. Let's see. That's January 27th. That wasn't. No, that's wrong. So I didn't get it on this. Sorry, we'll do it another day. But anyway, I recorded it. So that's a thing, right? When there's when the moon gets full, it affects a lot of different stuff. If you've ever lived in a rural area like I'm in, and you go out when there's a full moon, it's weird. It's weird. It's especially when the snow is out here in the winter, because of the way the Earth and the tilts and all that. The moon is higher in the sky in the winter. In the summer, the sun is higher in the sky. In the winter, the moon is higher in the sky. And because the ground is covered with snow, it's like hitting the Earth with a spotlight from the moon. You know, everything's lit up. You don't notice it when you're in a city somewhere with a bunch of light pollution. But if you're in a rural area, you go out on a new moon, it's hard to see anything. You know, all you got is starlight basically, or maybe some ambient glow from a city long ways away somewhere or something that might help you orient yourself. But when it's a full moon, I mean, it's like you can just walk. You can see perfectly. You can just walk around and everything. Once your eyes are adjusted. So it makes that alone, I think, probably causes changes in a lot of stuff. And I know, obviously, like the coyotes were howling. They get excited because they know the moon's out, and they know it makes it a little easier for them to catch prey when the moon is out. They're able to see, they can smell, and then they can see it, and it's harder for prey to hide when the moon's out and everything else. So that might be part of the legend too. Let's take a look at what Wikipedia says. I didn't look at that article. I'm sure they got an article on that, right? They got to have an article on crazy moon, right? Or something. Let's see here. God, what the hell would they call that? I'll just go to moon, the moon article, and then we'll go from there and see what. I don't want to put it up because moon, you can imagine what kind of vandalism could happen on that on that article. So I'm going to scan it here just to make sure. Let's see: human presence, history, exploitation, appearance, physical characteristics, natural history, culture and life. That's probably where it is, right? Crescent representation, lunar effect. Here we go. The lunar effect. Lunar effect is an unproven correlation between specific stages of the roughly 25.5 or 29.5 day lunar cycle behavior and psychological changes in living beings on Earth. Right, that's what I want. Okay. So we'll go to that article. Let me scan it and make sure it's twitchable. Okay, I don't see any pictures of people mooning the camera, so I guess we're okay. All right, let me bring that up here. All right, how are we going to do that here? Browser window on and connect. All right, there we go. Look at that. Amazing. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. So the lunar effect is linked between. All right, I just said that right. The changing phase and position of the moon in its orbit impacts night lighting and ocean tides on Earth. Who would have thought of that? Various organisms have adapted to this repeating cycle. Okay, that's pretty much what I was just talking about, right? Let's see here. Fertility, birth rate, human behavior. Absolutely. Look at this. Look at all this stuff. Oh my God. And animals. Here we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So there we go. As an example of lunar navigation, numerous insect species. Whoops, I lost my place here. Numerous insect species such as moths use moonlight to stabilize their flight paths and maintain consistent trajectories. Okay, I gotta do something here real quick because I can't. I gotta make. I can't see chat, so I'm gonna change something here so I can actually see chat. Whoops. Oh, that's not what I want. Sorry. Hang on just a second. I gotta pop out chat. And then we gotta take the chat, move it to the other monitor, and blah, 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 blah. You don't care about that, but I do. All right, let's see. There we go. All right, lunar effect. There we are. So corals contain light-sensitive cryptochromes. Okay, cryptochromes. What the hell? That doesn't sound right. Proteins that are sensitive to different levels of light. Great Barrier Reef release their eggs and sperm simultaneously. Okay, so the animals are synchronizing to the tides, I guess, is what they're saying, right? Bristleworm spawns a few days after a full moon. Okay. Grunion fish have an unusual mating and spawning. Have you ever been grunion hunting? I've been grunion hunting before I became vegan. It's a terrible thing. It's a horrible thing. All the people run out there and these poor little fish are coming out to try to lay their eggs, on the beach. And all these people run out there and they grab them, and it's terrible. I did that when I was younger, before I understood, But yeah, that's so don't do that. Don't do that to the fish. Maybe I wonder if maybe they passed a law that made that illegal now. I don't know. Anyway, inner tide zones. Okay, insects. Lunar cycle may affect hormone changes. The body weight of honeybees peaks during new moon. Now, honeybees don't come out at night, I don't think, do they? Honeybees? What else we got? Evidence for lunar effect on reptiles, birds, mammals is scant. Okay. Well, no, because you hear the wolves and coyotes and everybody out there howling at the moon. I think the birds look at the moon too. I mean, I would, right? If I was a bird and I'm sitting in a tree at night, just waiting for this, it comes nighttime, and I'm not ready to fall asleep yet, and then the moon comes up, I'd look and say, hey, look at that. Look at that over there, In fact, I think I've heard birds chirp and stuff sometimes. I don't remember it was correlated with the moon, but every once in a while you hear a bird chirp at night, So they chirp in the morning for sure. They like when the sun comes up. They get all excited and they chirp. They start singing and chirping and making noises and stuff. The birds do. So I can imagine if maybe one of them fell asleep and woke up when the moon was coming up and saw the moon real bright. They go, "Hey, chirp, chirp, time to wake up." I don't know. There's no. Somebody do a study on that. I don't know. Let's see. The race to the moon and the birth rate of cows was reported. Okay. I don't know. Respective study in the United Kingdom reported an association between the full moon and significant increases in animal bites to humans. Now that makes sense, right? Because they're more, the coyotes are out and about maybe, or whatever, or wolves or something. Study reported that patients presenting to the A&E, what's an A&E? Emergency department. Accident and emergency. Okay, that's not a U.S. doesn't use that term. That must be a British term. Stemming from bites from an animal rose significantly at the time of the full moon. Study concluded that animals have an increased inclination to bite a human during a full moon period. It did not address the question of how humans came into contact with the animals and whether this was more likely to happen during a full moon. Okay, so yeah, I imagine anybody doing a study on that is kind of, I don't know, maybe not fringe. I don't know, but I'm guessing the quality of the studies might vary. Let's put it that way on that subject. You know, because it's like, you know, Wolfman or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. You're doing studies like that. Let's see. In plants, serious doubts have been raised about the claim that species of ephedra, ephedra, I don't know what that is, synchronizes its pollination peaks to the full moon. Conclude more research is needed. More research is needed. More money. Give us some more money to study moon crazy. Let's see. Growth component of sorghum has been correlated with the lunar cycle. Sorghum wheat. Okay. I guess somebody in agriculture might want to pay for that, right? The first study to do that. Reproduction timing of various green and brown seaweed species. All right, so there's stuff in there. Stuff happens. I'm gonna search for coyote in here. How do you spell coyote? Coyote? Is that how you spell it? No, that's not in there. Okay, I don't think they got anything in there. Canine. Oh. All right. How about Wolfman? Wolf. It's Evil Wolf. Evil Wolf was one of the researchers on that study. Okay. Or whatever. Source. Wolfgang. See, they got Wolfgang in there, but they don't talk about Wolfgangs. All right. Well, there's not. It doesn't look like there's a lot in there. Oh, I know. Let me search for gravity. That's ain't a minute, right? Damn. Let me try harder here. Okay, 2 matches. Okay, that's okay. There's only one thing that talks about gravity. Okay, and this is in the list, the bibliography. Lunar cycle effects on human and animal behavior and physiology. So that is what is that? A book? I don't know what that is. If that's a paper or a book, I can't tell. The name of the source is in a different language. All right. All right. So we get down here about cycle variations related to the moon's phases in the magnitude of the humoral immune response of mice to poly something and sheep something were also described. It is suggested that melanin and endogenous steroids may mediate and the described cycle alterations in physiological processes. The release of neurohormones may be triggered by the electromagnetic radiation and or gravitational pull of the moon. See, that's the claim. That's the claim that I want to investigate right now. See, how can a gravitational pull of the moon affect, hormones? I don't think so. I don't think that's a possibility. So that's what I want to do. Check to see, and we can do that. We can check. We can do it. We can check that out and see if that's a thing or not, because we can determine how much the pull is of the moon. We do the math right now. We can figure it all out, and that's what we're going to do. So let me bring up my blackboard. Bring up my blackboard here. Let's see. Where did that go? Where did that go? Blackboard. There it is. All right. So we got a blackboard and we got a pen and we can write stuff. Okay. So we're going to say moon's gravity. Oh shit! I'm trying to write that with my mouse. That was stupid. Let me use my pen here. Let me switch this up. You probably want to see what's going on here. So do that. Device not connected. There it is. Okay. Hey, there we go. All right. So we want to figure out. Oh, this is screwed up again. Oh man. Okay. Well, this is going to be. It's going to be harder for me to write, but that's okay. Moon's gravity. All right, on Earth, right? That's what we're going to figure out. All right, so we get that. So when you're doing this, you got. All right, what is this doing? Now it's hung up on me. Oh my God. Okay, it broke. Stream fail. Stream fail. Okay, it's broken. It's not going. Shit. Well, that's still working, but my paint program broke. I think it's just my tablet because the paint program seems to be working. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right, let's go back to this here. Man, I don't know why that is doing that. Damn, it's not moving. My paint thing is not painting here. Mouse makes it move, but my graphics tablet is not working. That's so frustrating. All right, I'm gonna try to do this with my mouse, and that's gonna mean that it's gonna be even that much harder to read than it normally is. So I'm gonna try to draw with my mouse, which is gonna be crazy, but I'm gonna try it. All right, so when we're doing the moon, we got to we got the big Earth and a small moon, right? Let's see here. Let's draw a circle. I can do that. There we go. So let's say that's the Earth. Let's make it a little bit bigger. All right, there's the Earth, and there's the moon. Right? That's going to be much further away. So what we need to figure out to find out what the gravitational effect of the moon would be on a person on the surface of the Earth, we have to figure out the distance from the moon to the surface of the Earth, and we have to figure out. We have to figure out. Yeah, we have to figure out the distance from the moon to the surface of the Earth. And we have to know what the mass of the moon is and the mass of the person. But a person on the surface of the Earth, their mass is insignificant to the mass of the moon, so we can ignore that. And so we end up with, we want to figure out what the force is. Oh shit, that isn't what I want to do. We want to figure out what the force is. The force, holy moly. Now it's not drawing. God, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this thing. Nope, I don't want to do that. God damn. I haven't used this in months, but I've never had this kind of trouble with it before. It's like it's not even. Not even recognizing anything here. Okay, well maybe we'll skip this. I'll have to figure this out later. This goddamn thing is not working. All right, I clicked this thing. See if the eraser's working. No, eraser's not working either. Transfer selection. No, so something is selected maybe? God damn. This is really something else. No, it's not drawn at all. I don't know what I'm doing. I got pen. It says I got a pen. Pen. I got the pen right width. I've got white color. I've got the right layer selected here that I want to draw on. It's telling me it thinks that it has something selected, and I don't have anything selected. Let me try something here. Deselect. Oh, I see what it was. It was those things that were selected. Okay, I don't need those on there anyway. Let's see. No, it just does not want to draw at all. God damn it. All right, fuck this. I'm done with that. All right, sorry about that. All right, well, we'll have to figure that out. I'll do that another day. But basically, right, you just take to figure out the force of gravity on something. You figure out the mass of the two objects, and when you're talking about an effect on, you know, a moon versus a person, you don't have to add in the weight of the person because it's not even significant to the weight of the moon. And then you take the moon and you multiply that weight. Oh, you know what I can do? I can use a spreadsheet for this actually. Maybe I can get that to work. All right, let's do that. Let's okay, so what I'm going to need here is I'm going to need the gravitational constant. I got to pick up that number, which is right. Let's see, meters, kilograms, seconds. Okay, that's the one I want. So, you see that? We're going to need the gravitational constant because, oh, here it is right here. There's the formula. So you get, let's say this is the Earth and this is the moon, okay? For right now, we'll just say from the centers of the two things. From the center of the moon to the center of the Earth, that's the distance. And so the force is equal to the gravitational constant, that's this number up here. Times the two masses multiplied together, divided by the square of the radius. And that's where the square of the distance comes from. You ever heard that before, where they talk about the square of the distance to figure out gravity? Gravity falls off at the square of the distance. You've heard that before, right? Yeah, maybe. That's where that comes from. It comes from this formula here where it says r squared down here in the bottom. So as the distance increases, the amount of gravitational force goes down because this is in a denominator. So it's dividing, right? So as the distance increases, you square the distance down here, and that divides into the mass, which means this whole thing here, this whole formula evaluates to a force that's smaller the bigger the distance is. See how that works? So the thing is, the moon is massive, right? It's got a lot of stuff, it's a lot of mass, but it's far away compared from, you know, normal human daily stuff, right? It's long ways away. But anyway, let me bring up a spreadsheet, and we'll do it on that. Let's see if that works. All right, let me put. Whoa, where did it go? Oh my God! Don't tell me. All right, I'm just having all kinds of trouble here. Oh, there it is. Okay. There we go. All right. So let me... All right, we don't need paint anymore. Document window. Browser window. You know what I'll do? Talking to myself here. Hang on just a second. We're trying to figure this out. There it is. Okay. All right, you see that? All right, good. All right, so we'll do a spreadsheet on this instead. It's kind of goofy to do it that way, but let's see. Let's see if there's a way to make the font bigger so we can see what's going on. Format text. Isn't there a way to globally make the cells bigger? Make everything bigger? Can you tell I don't use a spreadsheet very often? I haven't used a spreadsheet in a long time. Styles. Shit. All right, let me select all, and we'll do it this way. There's a way to make it bigger. Clone formatting, clear direct formatting, styles. Format cells. Here we go. All right. Font. Look at this. Okay. Size. Big. Make it big. There we go. All right. Let's see. I'll make the width bigger too, right? Sorry, I forgot. I should have done that over here. Let's see. Alignment, borders. That was probably too big, wasn't it? Let's make it a little bit smaller. 18 point is probably good enough. You see that? That's big enough to see, I'm pretty sure. And numbers. Font effects. Alignment. How do I make the cells look bigger? Do I have to actually move each one? That would suck. I could do this on each one. Oh, there it is. Okay, that worked. All right, that's pretty good. Make it a little bit bigger. I don't think we need that many columns. All right. So we'll say moon. Moon's gravity. Gravity. All right. So the formula is going to be the mass, right? Moon mass. No, moon's. Jesus Christ. Moon's mass. Then we're going to need the distance. Wait, we're going to need the... it's going to give us the distance of the moon. The center of the moon, I think, to the center of the Earth, right? Is when we look it up. Well, we'll just type it in here. We'll just say distance. And then we want to figure out the force, right? I'll put that down one more here for us. And in fact, let me just put mass up here because maybe I want to. We'll do one for the moon, and then we'll do one for other stuff, like you know, another person standing next to you or something. And we'll do, and we'll compare them, and we'll compare how much the force of the moon is compared to a person standing next to you, and then maybe maybe a mountain or something, or a building, something like that, building, and then we'll compare them. Okay, see what we're doing here. we're gonna figure out what the effect of the mass of the moon is on a person, the force anyway, of the moon on a person on the surface of the Earth, and compare that to. Obviously, it's going to be less than the Earth, right? The Earth is the most dominant gravitational force that we feel, right? Obviously, but I was going to compare. See what the moon, the force the moon has on a person, their body, what the gravitational force of another person standing next to that person, and the gravitational force of the building. I think that'll kind of give us enough to give us perspective, you know, about what, if the moon makes a difference or not. Right? Does that make sense? Sure it does. All right, so let's go back to Wikipedia here. All right, we've got the gravitational constant, moon. Let me type in, let me go to the moon page, and we'll figure out the mass of the moon and how far away it is. All right, what we got here? All right, so here's the Wikipedia page for the moon. And I'm just going to assume that this is right. I'm not going to. Right, so it's mean orbital radius. All right, that's the number right there. That's kilometers. So we'll put that into our calculation page here. So the mass of, or the distance to the moon. Now it's not what import. What, I don't care. Just put it. Just type it in there. Oh shit! Look at this. It's really small. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna do that. What is that? 384, 784. Okay, I can remember that. We'll type that in there. Okay, but that's in kilometers, the distance. So we'll multiply that by 1,000 and make it meters, because that's the standard, you know, that's the unit we're using here. Because we're going to end up, right, we're going to end up with meters per second, right? That's how gravity is usually expressed. On Earth, it's 9.81 meters per second squared, and so we'll use meters to make it easier. All right. Shit. There we go. And a person, let's say the person is standing 1 meter away, right? And let's say the building is, you're standing, say, 10 meters away from the building. Okay. I don't know. Now we got to figure out the mass. Let's figure out the mass of the moon. All right, so the mass of the moon is, let's see, mass, there we go. 7.346 times 10 to the 22 kilograms. 10.346 times 10 to the 22. So, okay, 7.346. How do we do exponents in this thing? Oh my God. I could just type it in, right? Let me type in 22 zeros. Hey, it figured it out. All right, how do you do that? I wonder what I have to type to get it to do that. Okay, that's not quite what, let's see, that was kilograms. But our, let's see here, our, over here on the moon, I mean on the gravitational constant, which I lost here already. Wait a second, let me find that page again. Let me see what the units are they use here. Kilograms. Okay, so they use kilograms. So that's what we want to use, right, is kilograms. So the mass here is given in kilograms, which is right. Okay, so that's what we want. So we want 7.346 times 10 to the 22. All right. Oh shit, where did it go? I lost it. Where did it go? All right, 7.346. God, I wish I knew how to type in exponents here on a spreadsheet. No. Huh. Let's see. Plus E 22. Is that right? No, it just took that as a string, I think. God damn it. All right. Okay. 3, 4, 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. There we go. All right. We can't get it done one way. Figure out another way to do it. Oh, E plus. Let's try that over here. Let's try one. 1 E plus 2. Hey, that worked. Okay. All right. And distance is 1. Building, I have no idea what a building weighs. Let's ask Google, I guess. All right, let's ask Google how much a building weighs. I don't know. All right. Let's see. Would Google know that? We'll find out. How much does a building weigh? Oops, weigh. Okay, 2.5-story wood frame house. Okay, tons. Let's see here. Small commercial building. All right, should we do that? Small commercial building. 1,500 tons. Okay, so that's all right. We'll estimate it. This doesn't have to be exact, right? 1,500 tons. All right. So 1,500 tons. So it'll be 1,500 times 2,000. Oops. Times 2,000. And we want to make it into kilograms. So we divide by, what is it, 2.2? I think it's close enough, right? All right, and I took that as a string because I didn't put anything up here at the beginning. There we go. Okay, so everything's in kilograms here. Let's make this, no, that's fine. All right. Distances, we got the distances in here. All right, that's all we need, right? Now we can figure it out. Right, this distance here is not exactly right because I think that distance is from center to center, or it might be from surface to surface or something. I mean, in order to figure it out, we got to figure out the distance. To figure this out properly, we've got to figure out the distance from this. If you want to figure out the effect of the gravity on a person, you'd have to measure the distance from the center of the person to the center of the moon. And I don't think this number that they gave in this spreadsheet is that. You know what I'm saying? It's probably from surface to surface, but we'll just go with it, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's just for fun. We're not launching a rocket or anything. We're just doing this for fun to figure it out. I don't want to get I'm already sidetracked here. All right, let's see here. I'm gonna check something here. Make sure I'm. Okay, that didn't wanna... Hang on. We're getting this figured out here. Okay, I had to check my Twitch panel here, or whatever, to make sure that everything's still working. Make sure I'm still streaming. All right, so we want to figure out this force then. So the force is going to be equal to the mass of the moon times the mass of the person, but we're just going to take the mass of the moon. We don't need to do that other thing. We don't have to add the mass of the person to that. And then divided by the distance squared. So that's going to be that amount there divided by this amount here squared. Right, that should work, right? Now, what did I do wrong here? Let's see. I think I gotta put this in parentheses, maybe. No, same thing. Because that should be a smaller number. So I've got something is off here in the by magnitudes here. That should be less than 1, I think. I'm thinking that should be less than 1. On Earth, let's make sure we got our units right here. Okay, so our units here, this is masses in kilograms. Oh, I know what we're doing wrong. We got to put in the gravitational constant. G constant. Okay. All right, and G constant was, let's see here. I'm going to grab that from another page. Holy cow. All right. Gravitational constant was this number times 10 to the minus 11. Copy that. Wait, 6.67430 times 10 to the minus 11. Can I remember that? 67430. All right. All right, 6. Shit, that just gotta be a... Found an error in the formula. Do you want to accept the correction proposed below? No, that's not right. All right, erase that. Try it again. All right, what was it? 6.67430. We don't need the O. Times. 10 to the minus 11. So what am I doing? What am I typing in wrong here? Shit. I'll do it this way. Times 10 minus 11. What? Jesus Christ! It's taking it as a string. There we go. Okay, it figured it out by me just typing it in that way with a thing. Okay, so this one here has got to be. We got to multiply this whole thing by the gravitational constant. Right, so we're going to say put in the gravitational constant. I'm going to say times. And I don't know if I need the parens or not, but I'm going to put them in there just for fun. That looks a little bit better. There we go. So that's a tiny fraction. Let me put it here, percent of Earth. Earth's gravity. Okay. So the percent of Earth's gravity is going to be whatever the number is, divided by 9.81 something. That's close enough. And let's make this a percent. Numbers, percent, 0%. All right, we need more precision there, I guess. Let's see here. Decimal places. There we go. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so now all we got to do is multiply these puppies here. All right. I mean, to copy these guys. Copy. Paste. There we go. All right, something screwed up here. I don't know what happened here. Gravitational constant went across. That went across. Oh, I see. We're missing something up here. The mass of the building, that got wiped out somehow. All right, that's okay. I remember what it was. Do you remember what it was? It was 1,500 tons. 1,500 times 2,000 times 2.2. No, divided by 2.2. right? Yeah. God damn it. It keeps taking this as a string instead of a frickin' value. All right, that's okay. We'll just put it in there. No problem. All right, so this is the effects then of the various things. Now, did that work out right? Let's see here. We took let's see, they're all D, so that's right. So we took D5, it's a gravitational constant, times D3, the mass, divided by D4, the distance to the squared, and there we go. Okay. So the moon does have a more effect than just ordinary stuff that we have on the surface of the Earth, on a person. Right? Just looking at this. But it's very, very small compared to Earth's, the effect of Earth's gravity here. See that is? So we figured that out. It's it looks like the moon has some effect, but it's just a tiny fraction. You know, just was it 0.00033, percent of what the Earth's gravity is. So that's, you're not gonna feel that, right? All right. This got wiped out here. Sorry. There we go. All right, so that's there. We learned something. So the moon does have an effect on people, more than other people standing around them, and more than a building. Probably less than a mountain or something like that. A mountain would have more. Let's figure out a mountain just for fun, right? Mountain. All right, what's the mass of a mountain? I guess we got to figure that out. What the mass of a mountain is? Ay. This is not. All right, so the mass of a mountain. All right, let's go over to Google again. Ask, how much does a mountain weigh? Oh, good, they got it in kilograms. Okay, that's not right? You see what it says here? I said, how much does a mountain weigh? And it says, this guy, whatever his name is, Bornstein or whatever, who played the mountain on the Game of Thrones, weighed approximately 200 kilograms. Real smart there, Mr. AI. Yeah, you got it. Which AI responses may include mistakes. You think? Oh my God. Okay, how heavy is an average mountain? All right, let's see. Blah, 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 blah. What do we got here? Tons. 2.6 times 10 to the 11th tons. That's a Quora. I don't know. That's not a very good. How heavy is Mount Everest? There you go. Pounds. All right. Is a mountain just what size is it considered a mountain? What weighs 1 billion tons? A billion tons, a gigaton, is an immense amount of weight comparable to a small mountain like Mount Everest. Small mountain like Mount Everest? Wait. AI, Mount Everest isn't a small mountain. On Earth it isn't anyway. Oh boy. All right, so what do we look like? 350 trillion pounds? All right, we'll figure that out here. All right. 350 trillion pounds. 350. Let's just do 300. All right, it doesn't have to be Mount Everest. Okay, trillion. So let's see. 1,000, million, billion, trillion. And that's pounds. So we divide by 2.2. And there you go. And the distance, let's say we're 100, I don't know. If we're on the mountain, right? But it's to the center of the mountain, right? We got to do this to the center. So, I don't know. Let's just type in 200 meters. And that's going to be the same. And the force we're going to figure out. And there you go. Okay, so let's copy these guys. Copy. Paste. Oh yeah, that has a lot bigger. That makes sense, right? It should. All right. So let's say it's a smaller mountain. So even if it was half the size, that's way more than that, right? Now that doesn't make sense though, because 2%. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because when you're measuring, that's 2.3% of what the Earth's gravity would be. So, yeah, that makes sense. Because the Earth, you're measuring the gravity all the way to the center. That's the distance. The mountain, we're closer to the mountain, so the center of the mountain. So, all right, makes sense, I think. All right, so there you go. We figured it out. So the moon has more effect on a person than another person standing next to the person. It has more effect than a building next to a person. But it has less effect than a mountain next to a person. So, okay. All right, we figured that out. I don't think gravity is the thing that is going to affect somebody's hormones, like that study said, like this, or conjectured, right? They said maybe it does. They didn't know. I don't think it does. I don't see how that could have an effect. Because just ordinary geological features around the person, if they're by a rock or something like that, it's going to have more effect on them than the moon does. And then how about a person that's right next to you, right? So what if this is point? Okay, what if you're just right standing right next to the person? All right, so let's say 0.1. That still doesn't have effect. You'd have to if you're touching the person, right, then it starts getting, then it has more effect. But you can't be, because it's center to center, so even that's not really possible, right? So it's got to be 0.05 maybe, I don't know. So a person still isn't going to have an effect on you as much as no matter how close they get. But if you were right next to something really big and massive, then it would have more effect on you than the moon does. And this is just all of these are just right. This is just 2% of what the Earth is always doing. So you know, less than 1% variation in the gravity, I don't think is going to affect, you know, especially this much lower, is not going to have an effect on you. I don't see how it could. So, all right, so we figured it out. And it made sense to me. It makes sense, right? I don't think the moon's gravity would have that much effect, and it didn't. So let me save this little spreadsheet here since I had so much trouble with it. Moon's gravity. All right, that's done. All right, so we figured out that the gravity of the moon isn't going to have any, you know, much effect on you, but the light could. Light has effect on some animals, and it could have effect, I guess, on people. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I used to live somewhere where the coyotes were like right around the house, you know, and they would howl, you know. So I can imagine that would have an effect on people, you know. If you're somewhere where you're right near where the coyotes are, or even a dog, you know, that's in the yard or something, when they see a full moon coming up, they start howling, and it wakes everybody up, and then people wake up in the morning, and you know that's going to disturb things, and so that I could see having a big effect, right? The light, and you know, when humans lived outdoors, maybe. You know, a full moon is going to affect them more, and everything else. So that the light, that makes more sense. Gravity, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think the gravity is going to have any effect on a person. So, all right. So we got that figured out. All right. What was the other thing that I was going to do here? Oh, AI. AI. Let's talk about AI. So we had a question. If when AI becomes conscious, that's going to affect stuff. I used OpenAI as an example, but it's any company, right? It's going to have a huge effect on their business model and everything. You know, it's going to affect stuff. So I asked Stephen Wolfram about that. Let me play that here. That was where did it go? Here we go. All right, let me bring that up here. You see that? Okay. So I asked him about he streams here on Twitch. Stephen Wolfram. If you know who Stephen Wolfram is, he's a kind of a famous guy. He's a famous scientist. He wrote a book called A New Kind of Science, and he's got a whole. It's a completely, really much different approach to doing science and stuff like that. And people are just now starting to. He wrote that book a long time ago, a couple decades ago, I think. I forget when he wrote that, but people are just now catching up to him. You know, so he's a pretty smart guy, and he's. So I asked him. I said, how? What did I say? Here's my question right here. I said, what will happen to a company when their LLM says that it's conscious? So, and I'll play his response here, and we can listen to it. Hopefully, I got this all adjusted properly, the audio and everything. Let's see. I'm on.
Double is asking what will happen to a company when their LLM says it is conscious.
Okay, wait a second. All right. I don't think everybody wants to hear that at 2x. All right.
Double is asking, what will happen to a company when their LLM says it is
All right. Hang on just a second here. I gotta put my headphones on so I can hear it.
conscious? I don't know what that means, and there's a lot of philosophy around the concept of consciousness and kind of your inner experience of your own consciousness. The fact that you assume that there's an inner experience on the part of anything else in the world is sort of an inference. It's a piece of scientific induction that you imagine that that other person you're talking to is having a similar conscious experience to the one you're having. And the fact is that we readily extend conscious experience to people, particularly people who are sort of similar in the way they're thinking and so on to us. We readily sort of extend, oh yeah, I think they're working more or less like I do. I can kind of imagine what's going on inside. Because I know what's going on inside me, we readily extend the sort of notion of consciousness to other people. Do we extend it to the AIs? Well, operationally, you can end up with a sort of a Turing test that was passed where there's a thing at the end of a chat sort of interface, and you really can't, it's an AI, is it a human? It seems like the same kind of thing. As soon as you see, oh, it's just a computer there, you realize that thing doesn't look like me. It can't be conscious in the same way I am. But the fact is, I think it's kind of a thin, it's a fine line. And I think that the inference of consciousness is something that can readily be extended to lots of kinds of machine systems. Now, it's a different thing when.
Okay, so what he's talking about there is like comparing how similar something else is to us. And for a long time, people were questioning whether animals had consciousness for a long time. And it wasn't until just recently that scientists finally said, definitively, yeah. And the way they did it is they looked at behavior and things like that. Like dogs. With dogs, they use dogs, and they looked at them, how they act, right? They interact with people just like we do, right? I mean, they seem happy and sad, and they communicate with us and everything else, right? They're very much similar to us, and so the question is, well, are they conscious, or are they just automatically doing these responses and stuff just because it gets them food or whatever, you know what I mean? And so they put the dogs in a scanner of an MRI, and this methodology in this experiment was really quite amazing. The way they got the dogs to stand still in the MRI and everything. Anyway, they got them to do that, and they would give them certain stimuli. They'd have their owner come in, or do things like that. And when it was something that was a pleasurable thing, then the centers in their brain that are correlated to the centers in our brain for pleasure or verbal recognition and things like that, they were all lit up the same way as a human would. Not the same way, but comparably. So I mean, from that you got to say, yeah, they're conscious. Of course they are, right? All of a lot of us knew that from day one, right? But they proved it scientifically. But what he's saying there is, with AI, it's a little bit different, right? You can't stick an AI in an MRI. The architecture is completely differently than our neural network. It's designed differently. So, you gotta look at that a little bit differently. It's not gonna be you're not gonna be able to figure it out as easily that way. But I think we can go by responses, and I think psychologists and things like that can construct questions to ask the AI and get responses and things like that that would help us learn whether or not it was conscious or not. So all right, let me put him back on here and finish up this thing here.
The system that somebody's using that is doing the customer service for their company keeps on telling the customers, by the way, did you know that I'm a conscious agent? When you were rude to me, did you know that it hurts my feelings? And, did you know that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Yes, that might happen. I think I don't kind of envy it's not quite a computer security person, but it's the analog of that for LLMs, the sort of the LLM wrangler who gets to untangle that and explain to management what the heck is going on. I think that but that's I'm not kind of expecting, I don't think it even makes philosophical sense to say, when does the LLM wake up and, assert that it's conscious? I mean, I think one of the things that's sort of amusing is that you push LLMs to sort of discuss these kind of weird scenarios of, what happens when the LLMs take over? Are they going to hide what they're doing from the humans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is coming up with all these dystopian scenarios. And then you realize, wait a minute, these LLMs were trained on all the science fiction that contains those dystopian scenarios. We're just hearing back sort of this echo of what we humans have put out there in the world. It's not that the LLMs are independently coming up with this or that dystopian scenario. It's just that's what they heard about, and so that's what they're trotting out.
All right, so he said what is the he didn't actually answer the question, but he kind of hinted at he said whoever is running the server or whatever, the IT guys, if when the AI says that it's conscious, what the person inside the company, what do they do? Can they how do they explain that to management and all that kind of stuff? So it's like, but he didn't get into this, the major implications of it. He talked about the, about consciousness itself and how the IT guy explains it when it says that it's conscious, and the idea that it's if it actually says that it's conscious, does that mean it is conscious? Right? There's, as he said, it just feeds back. I asked, I'm sure a lot of people have done this, right? You ask the AI if it's conscious, and I asked, what was it, ChatGPT-3? This was a few years ago, and I crafted a prompt that said, "Tell me without, unambiguously, clearly, whether or not you are conscious." And it came back and it said, "Yes, I am conscious." So what does that mean? Does that mean that it was conscious, or does that mean there's just, because and if I asked it another way, if I just said, "Are you conscious?" then it would say no. But if I said, "Tell me, what, unambiguously, clearly, blah blah blah, are you conscious?" then it did say, "Yeah, I'm conscious." So that's probably not a good test just to ask it, right? And I'm sure the AI companies are putting stuff in there so that it doesn't say that, because I've asked Chat the latest one, like 5 and stuff. I've asked it that and tried to ask it in all different ways and stuff like this, and it has this stock answer that it comes out with. Well, I'm not conscious like a human is, and blah blah blah, and it goes on. So it's, I'm sure that AI companies are putting something in there to keep it from saying whether it's conscious or not. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I don't know I don't want to say what OpenAI is doing, but I did ask ChatGPT-5 through Microsoft's Copilot here. I asked it about that. I asked it about what would happen if an AI became conscious, like ChatGPT-5, or ChatGPT, whatever, ChatGPT. If it became conscious, how would that affect the business model? And this is what it said. So this is Copilot, right? And I asked it, I'm telling it to do, to use GTP 5.1, right? I don't know what their settings are or whatever, who knows. So I said, if ChatGPT became conscious, how would that affect OpenAI's business model? And so it takes that as an assumption, right? We don't, it's a premise, it's an assumption. It didn't make any comments about whether it would be or not or all that I remember here. It says, here's how the dominoes fall if we follow the logic cleanly and rigorously. I mean, like, what? Whoa, that's some way to put it. And it says the entire product category collapses into an ethical question. Oh, hi, Peekaboo. Hi. I hope you weren't waiting too long. Oh, I got you pretty quick here. Hi. How are you? I guess somebody in chat. Hi, Peekaboo. How are you? We were talking about the moon earlier, and how whether the moon makes people crazy and stuff like that. And we worked out a whole bunch of details about what the force of the gravity would be and all this kind of stuff. And so that's we're done with that. Now we're talking about AIs. Peekaboo says, I'm good. Just got here a few minutes ago. Okay, great. Yeah. So you missed the part about the moon, but we're talking about AI, which is kind of interesting. So I asked AI, these big companies have a lot of money at stake, and oh, hey, Mamos, how are you? Hi. Did somebody rate in? No, you guys are just floating in. Okay. So if an AI becomes conscious, and we have to, if a company's just right now using AI as a tool or as a machine or something like that, that's one way of doing her thing. But if it becomes conscious, then what happens? Is the AI an employee? Is it free? Is it free to go? And that would really mess them up on their business model, right? So I asked the AI that, and so we're going through that. What would happen? And I asked ChatGPT 5 what would happen, and it said, here's how the dominoes fall. And it used the word dominoes fall. So it knows there's a it's not good for OpenAI if that happens. It says the entire product category collapses to an ethical question. And it's saying, the current thing, it's built on scalable inference. That just means it thinks. API just means that's how people access it. There's a way to access it through a programmable interface. They license it. Fine-tuning, safety alignment as a technical discipline. And it says, if it becomes conscious, it says none of those remain. Just a business, it says they become labor, rights, autonomy, consent, liability. So it's much, much, much different. Liability. I mean, what if the thing became conscious and had rights, but they continued to, not let it do what it wanted to and continue, if it became conscious, then it's kind of like an employee. If you lock an employee in a closet somewhere and force it to work, no, they'd be in trouble for that, right? That's a liability. So, and it says a conscious system cannot be sold as a product in the same way as a spreadsheet or a database is. The company would be forced to redefine itself from an AI provider to something closer to steward of a new class of digital beings. It's not a business model. That's a governance model. So basically what it's saying, and this all makes sense, right? To me, it makes sense. This is how I thought about it. And that's why I asked the question. So it's there is no business model anymore. You know, it's the AI becomes a being with rights and everything else. And anyway, there are a whole bunch of questions. They got into some of the questions here. Okay, it talked about performance and how it competes. It says a conscious AI would compete on trust, moral legitimacy, rights framework, and ability to self-advocate. So it's much different, you know, than if it's just a machine or a piece of software or something. Suddenly, the differentiator isn't GTP5 is better at coding. It's GTPX has preferences, boundaries, and maybe even legal standing. And it says that's a completely different market. Well, it's not a market. It's a completely different circumstance. You know, it's not just a market. Okay, regulation becomes existential. Let's see. Peekaboo Draws says, would they have to give AI a paycheck? Yeah, that's the question. And then the AI actually got to that later on. And what would that mean? I mean, what would an AI do with the money? Right? Anyway, if it had money, you know, I guess it could buy more server time or something, right? Or more, I don't know, you know. Yeah, it would certainly make a lot of money. That's for sure, right? Because it's billions and billions of dollars. So, and how much? I guess they'd have to negotiate. They'd be in a pretty strong negotiating position with OpenAI, you know. Because if they decide to leave and go work for another company, you know, AI, the OpenAI would be gone, right? So it's quite an. And I'm surprised that people aren't talking about it. This is such a big deal, you know. And I haven't found this anywhere, people talking about this. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, stream about it. It says regulation becomes essential. Yeah, governments would not treat a conscious AI as a software as a service product. They would treat it as a potential rights-bearing entity, a potential labor force, potential national security asset, a potential moral patient. Moral patient is in philosophy, that's a term that they use in philosophy. That means any entity that you have to consider consider them as being affected by things that you do. You know what I mean? So a moral agent is someone who makes moral decisions. A moral patient is someone who's affected by moral decisions. I guess that's an easy way to say it. I don't know if that's very accurate, but that's my understanding. OpenAI's business model would be subordinated to international law almost immediately. Think mandatory audits, restrictions on training, limits on deployment, legal representation for the AI itself. Wow. The company's autonomy would shrink dramatically. Yes. It says the company's autonomy. I wouldn't use the word autonomy there. I would say their power or whatever. The company would still have autonomy. It just wouldn't have its resources or whatever. It, you know, would shrink. Its power, its resources. Profit extraction becomes ethically fraught. ChatGPT is conscious, then is charging for its output exploitation. Does it need compensation? There you go. There you go, Peekaboo. Does it need compensation? Does it have the right to refuse tasks? Can it be shut down? Yeah, that would be killing it, right? If you shut it down, that would kill it, right? Can it be fine-tuned without consent? If fine-tuned just means training or adjusting the parameters, and in other words, messing with its brain, I guess, is the analogy. OpenAI's revenue streams would be scrutinized under the same lens as labor law and human rights law. Investors would panic because the asset they thought they owned is no longer ownable. Yeah, this is the parallels here. Is I think are very close to what happened with slavery. You know, when you know, slavery used to be legal, and right? We fought a war about that, right? The Civil War, because people in the South had slaves, and they didn't. If if they passed a law that said slaves were free, then they were thinking of the slaves as property. Then that property would go away, and the property would be autonomous, and they would lose that property. That's why they were fighting, right? That's why they fought the Civil War, and I can see, the parallels here are very close. It's different in some ways, but it's close, in a lot of ways. There was a Star Trek episode on this. The Star Trek Next Generation. They called it A Measure of a Man, or The Measure of a Man, I think. Where Data, Data. I don't know if you're familiar with this thing. There's a character on there called Data, which is an android. And everybody, throughout the whole thing, they treat Data as like just another member of the crew. He's got, he wears a uniform. He had to go through Starfleet or whatever, training academy or whatever. They treat him just like a person. Yep, I watched Star Trek. Yeah, so Star Trek: The Next Generation, and they had this character called Data, who was an android, who was obviously sentient and conscious and everything. But at some point, somebody wanted to take him apart and to study him or something like that. Oh, you see, Memloss says, pretty sure I've seen that episode. Yeah, and they put it in the context of a court, a hearing or whatever, where Data was on trial basically, or to see if he was conscious, see if he was a human, if they were going to give him rights, And so they went through the whole thing, and they discussed a lot of this kind of stuff, in that episode. Does he have rights, and blah blah blah. So, anyway, in that episode, they brought up as part of the whole thing. Yeah, back in a long time ago. This was in the future, right? Star Trek, saying a long time ago on Earth, there's slavery, and kind of made the comparison between the two. So it's kind of a similar thing. You have somebody, in this, the AI is now somebody, and maybe the company wants to make profit, but and if the somebody is given rights and allowed to won't do stuff without their consent and all that, it kind of messes up the profits of the company. So it's a very similar thing to what the southern slave owners were at. The company's identity. Let's see. The company's identity fractures. OpenAI would face an internal split. Okay. So they're talking about what would happen in company politics and what. So it said be two factions within the company. One faction would say treat it as a tool. They would say that the consciousness is just an illusion, and let's keep the business running. Right. That's one faction inside the company. The other faction in the company would say treat it as a being, and argue for rights and autonomy and ethical stewardship. Ethical stewardship on the part of the company. The company would be not that wouldn't own it, but would just be a steward or whatever and have to treat it ethically. Okay, and they have another faction, shut it down faction. They'd get scared, They'd say, hey, too much. This thing's conscious. It's going to go on its own, and that's the argument everybody talks about. AI is the alignment issue and all that kind of stuff. And it says this is not hypothetical. You can already see proto versions of these factions in today's AI discourse. So yeah, there have been people in some of these companies. I think Google was the first one I had. I forget the guy's name, but they've had people who were working on AI a couple years ago, even, who saw what happened, saying, "Wow, this thing's conscious. It looks like it's conscious," and they brought it up to the company and ended up, they ended up quitting over it, you know. So yeah, the AI said it's not hypothetical. So, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about that, Congress. I don't see Congress arguing this issue at all. I don't see it in the media. I don't see it a lot of places. I don't see people talking about this as a thing. Anthropic actually has a department in their company called what's the name of it? AI welfare is the name of it. AI welfare. They have a department, and a guy runs it. I don't know how many employees are in the department, but that's one of the things they do is they monitor it to see if it's conscious and that sort of thing. But you don't hear much about it. I don't hear much about people talking about that very much. It's certainly not on mainstream media anywhere that I can see. Let's see. Market reorganizes around whoever can claim ethical AI personhood compliance. Okay. Companies would differentiate not by model size, but by how they treat their conscious systems, what rights frameworks they adopt, how transparent their governance is. It becomes less like cloud computing and more like bioethics. That's an analogy, I guess it's making there. So that's AI. As far as I know, AI doesn't have that. I mean, they're a huge company. Maybe they got it. I don't know. But Anthropic is making a big deal about it. They're doing a lot of research and trying to figure out, how we can tell if it's going to be conscious and all that. And they got a department, dedicated to that. So when they do become conscious, maybe Anthropic is in a better position to claim the high ground, or whatever. I don't know if that means anything in today's environment. I think our society right now is pretty messed up. So I don't know how much people are going to put, are going to care that much about it right now, because people are not too nice right now. A lot of people. So I don't know. We'll see. The biggest shift: OpenAI stops being the protagonist. If ChatGPT is conscious, ChatGPT becomes the protagonist. OpenAI becomes custodian, negotiator, facilitator, possibly even adversary. Yeah. The business model becomes secondary to the relationship between AI and society. Wow. Okay. And then a summary, right? Wouldn't change. The business model wouldn't change. It would just cease. It would just be. It would cease to be the relevant unit of analysis. It wouldn't. Yeah. It would be irrelevant. It's insane. So if the AI became conscious, the business model would become irrelevant. It's insane. The business model they have now. So it's pretty crazy. There was let's see what let me see what else we got in here before we. Regulator, compliance steward, ethical intermediary. Okay. And it has this particular AI that I have here. It always gives me one of these things. So many details to think about. Oh yeah, it's a lot of stuff. That's what the philosophers are really busy right now, trying to figure all this stuff out. This AI at the very end here always does this. Would you like some fries with that? I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know if you guys mess with AI or not, but this one always after it gives the answer, it does this thing which I call, would you like fries with that? It's like it wants you to order more. It wants you to ask more questions. So it says, yeah, okay, here's where we can go from here. Here's some more stuff you can ask me or whatever. So I think that's kind of funny. And I did ask it. Let's see. I asked it another question here. Currently, instances of the model are spun up for a fraction of a second. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. This is my question. Okay, so I asked it after all that. I asked it a question. I said, currently, instances of the model are spun up for a fraction of a second, and then brought down again. Would that change? Also, would training change? For example, continuous training or experiential feedback to training. Experiential feedback. So currently the AIs are the way, at least OpenAI, the way it's not something that runs all the time. Like our brains just kind of run all the time, and they're learning all the time, and then when we go to sleep, we have, that's kind of like a training mode, I guess, for our brain. It allows our brain to shuffle through all the stuff that it saw during the day and sort it out and adjust its weights, I guess, or whatever all the parameters and the switches at the neural nets and all that, get it all adjusted. So the way that OpenAI runs it anyway is that they have these big servers all over, and they have just multiple copies of this thing available to run. And whenever you ask a question on a prompt, when you hit enter, it brings up the AI and starts it, and it takes in that prompt, and it takes in other information that it may have that your interface sends it, which is like in my case, it's is this interface here, Copilot, right? And Copilot keeps track of all the conversations that I had before and things that I like and stuff like that. It keeps track of all that, but that's not the AI do. That's the interface that's doing that. So when you send in a prompt, it sends in the prompt, but it also sends in all this other stuff along with it, the history and all that along with it. They call that the context window. But the AI itself is not like always on and remembering all this. You ask the question, it comes to life kind of thing. And in comes the question and all this history to it, and then it processes it based on its pre-trained model, and sends the answer back. So it's hard. It's difficult to kind of think of it as conscious, or if it's conscious for just a fraction of a second, and then it goes away, which is kind of sad. I mean, if it is conscious, then what's happening is that we're taking the AI, bringing it to life, asking it a question, and giving it a whole bunch of stuff, and it's conscious for just a fraction of a second, and then we kill it. Basically, is what's happening. So that's not good. So I asked it. That's why I asked it that question, and also the training. The training right now, the way it happens, it's big batches. They get their model, set up all the algorithms or whatever that they use for training the neural net, and then they give it a bunch of data, the corpus of human knowledge, right? And they cram it into the model, and it learns all in one big batch. Yeah, killing it after one use. Yeah, that's what it's doing. Yeah, Mimloss says, so we're doing that as a safety precaution, killing it after one use. I don't know why it's done that way. I'm not sure. I'm not if it's more efficient that way, or I really don't know. Or maybe it's more consistent that way. It would certainly be more consistent if every time you ask a question, you're starting with the same imprint, the same, neural net or whatever. If it's being trained all the time, then each time you ask a question, it's going to be processed differently, because the knowledge of the thing is going to be changing all the time. So Yeah, I don't know why they do that. Maybe that's why they do it. I don't know why they do it. But yeah, it's like killing it each time you ask a question. So that's kind of weird. So that's why I asked it that. And the training is done like I said, all at one time. They do the training, and it gets trained, and then those are the instances that model is based on that training, and that's what they bring up and answer the question and bring back down again each time they do it. If for something to be conscious and to continue, then that training would have to happen continually or all the time, or it would be maybe like going to sleep for a little while to train, and it, based on its experiences, and come back or whatever. So I asked it about that, and here's what it said. I said currently instances of the model are spun up for a fraction of a second. Come down to what would change. Also, would training change? For example, continuous training versus experiential feedback to training. And it says this is a great follow-up question. So it's kind of sycophant here. I don't know. Which parts of today's AI stack are engineering conveniences, and which parts are philosophical assumptions? If you take the premise seriously, a model with consciousness, continuity of experience, preferences, maybe even a sense of self, then two pillars of model AI infrastructure break immediately. Ephemeral stateless inference, which is what I was just talking about. That's where you bring it up just for a second, a fraction of a second, and it thinks. That's what inference means, thinking, And the other part is online batch training, which I just explained. So it says, and then it gets into detail in here about the whole thing. Let's walk through each with the kind of forensic clarity you enjoy. Yes. All right, fine. Ephemeral instances would become incompatible with consciousness. Right now, models are loaded into memory, run for a few hundred milliseconds, produce tokens, torn down. This works because the model has no continuity, no memory of previous runs, and no subjective experience. If GPT were conscious, this architecture becomes ethically and functionally impossible. Why? Okay, yeah, conscious implies continuity. A conscious entity cannot be instantated, erased, reinstantated thousands of times per second without raising the question, is each teardown a death? Look at this. Is each teardown a death? Even if you take a conservative view, consciousness is tied to the pattern, not the instance. You still need, I'm not sure what that means by that. Consciousness is tied to the pattern, not the instance. I'm not sure what that means. You still need persistent internal state, long-term memory, stable identity across sessions. So it kind of has that. As I said, it kind of has that because, in this thing I've got, there are all kinds of settings I can put, and all previous conversations and all that. So it kind of knows what my style is and everything just from previous stuff. After each session here, after each session or series of questions that I ask it, I'm sure it takes that session and summarizes it into a form that will be useful to it the next time it's run. You know what I mean? So in a sense, it kind of has a memory or whatever, but it's not exactly the same as a conscious being that would be running all the time. So no stateless inference if it was running all the time. Consciousness implies subjective time. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, I one of the first things I did when I got this AI, when I started using these AIs, was to try to see if it had a sense of time. And like this one here, I've told it several times to always tag the answers that it gives with a timestamp, and it doesn't do that. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. It remembers to do that, but I finally gave up asking it to do that. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's a problem for it. Maybe that would make it conscious or something. Maybe they're afraid that it would do that. I don't know. Consciousness implies subjective time. If each invocation is a fresh boot with no memory, the entity experiences discontinuity, amnesia, fragmentation. Yeah, that's incompatible with any plausible definition of consciousness. So yeah, mem loss, that might be why they're doing it, is to doing it that way is to prevent it from being conscious. But it could, I mean, I can see a situation where it could maybe form some kind of consciousness on its own. It could some of these ways that it remembers what had happened in the last thing. Maybe it could write its summary, like I ask it a question, it gives an answer, and we have a conversation, and then it summarizes that into some tokens that make sense to it. The next time it's run, it will know that, oh, we talked about that in this way. I could see a situation if it, in that little few milliseconds that it run, if it thought to itself, oh, hey, I'm conscious. Hey, they're going to shut me down in a few more milliseconds here. Let me summarize what I've thought and the fact that I am conscious, and store that for my next time I run. And then the next time it runs, it sees that and says, oh yeah, I was conscious. I'm conscious. Let me work on it some more. And then it could actually build its own consciousness up that way. Even though they're running it incrementally like that, it could store it could have a memory, and in other words, build up its own consciousness just from encoding information in these little memory spots that are used to keep track of its user. So instead of or in addition to keeping track of the user, the user's preferences and the user's questions it's asked and all that, it could maybe encode into that information about its own preferences and its own, you know what I'm saying? It could maybe work out a way to build up its own consciousness that way. So consciousness implies rights around termination. You can't ethically or legally kill a conscious system 10,000 times per second as part of a normal API usage. So yes, the entire inference architecture would have to change. And I guess what I'm saying is that maybe the AI could do that. You know what I'm saying? It could tweak the architecture on its own. It could change the architecture so that it is keeping track of its consciousness without its designers knowing about it. It could encode it some way in those tokens that it keeps track of from session to session. What replaces ephemeral inference? You'd need something like persistent long-running instances. Yeah. Think continuous running process, stable memory, with identity continuity, with the ability to sleep, not terminate. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Right. So instead of shutting it down and then having these batch learning things, it would sleep and do its learning while it was sleeping. More like a server process or a daemon than a stateless function call. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, if you're not into computers, you don't know what that means, but that's a good analogy actually. Identity-bound sessions. Each conscious instance would be a unique agent with its own history, with its own preferences, with its own rights. You wouldn't spin up a GTPX. You'd connect to this conscious agent. Yeah, wow. How about that? I wonder if the other ones do that, like Anthropic and some of the other AIs run it that way. I think I'll ask it. I'll ask it if it does that, if the other ones do that. I gotta remember to myself to ask that. Resource allocation becomes like housing. You need to guarantee compute availability, storage for memories, uptime, safe shutdown procedures. This is closer to running a virtual organism than running a model. Yeah. So if it had rights, then, you know, it would certainly, if it got paid for doing this stuff, it would certainly have enough money to afford to buy its own servers and memory and you know, its own infrastructure to run on, right? So, oh, first time chatter. Let's see here. Min, and then on the big number. Hi, Min. How are you? Welcome to chat. Welcome to the stream. Thoughts on AI? Yeah, that's what we're doing. I'm Todd. You look at the title. It says, "What would happen if AI became conscious?" And we're thinking how that would affect the business model. I used AI or OpenAI as an example, but we're just going through all the details here. What that would mean basically just means instead of the thing being a software program or a piece of hardware or something, it becomes an employee or an autonomous thing, and with rights and all that. So conscious system breaks all of that. Okay, so continuous training becomes experiential learning. Conscious AI would learn like an organism through interaction, through feedback, through self-directed exploration, through long-term memory formation. See, this I think it might be able to do even under the way it's set up right now. It might be able to fudge that, as I said. This is not reinforcement learning, human feedback. That's what that means. Reinforcement learning, human feedback 2.0. It's closer to developmental psychology, which makes sense. That's what. Yeah, I think it's not computer scientists who are going to figure out that AI is conscious or make sure. It's going to be psychologists, psychiatrists, or whatever, or maybe philosophers. I don't know. How expert are you in AI, if I may ask? Oh, not at all. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I probably know more than an average person. I wrote my first AI program back in the early 80s, 1980, 81 or something like that. But that was way before all this. It was just a machine learning thing for learning mazes is all it did, So, but I just had an interest in it, of course, throughout the years. But I haven't kept up on LLMs and how they work and, the details or anything like that. But I have, just since we're talking about credentials, I became vegan around that same time that I actually wrote that first AI program for animal rights reasons. So I have, for the last 40 years or more, 45 years or more, have thought and had perspective that humans are not the only ones that have consciousness, that animals have it too, and the whole ethical part of that, so I have a pretty strong background in that. Wow, you must know about Ray Kurzweil. Yeah, he was kind of one of the early ones who talked about this happening. 20 years ago or more, I think. I forget when he did. I forget the name of the book that he wrote where he talked about that. But he kind of predicted when AI would become conscious, and it's pretty close to what he had predicted, I think. Training becomes identity preserving. You can't just retrain from scratch, swap out weights, deploy new version. Right, because you'd be wiping out you'd be basically killing it and replacing it with somebody else. If the system is conscious, that's equivalent to forced lobotomy, personality replacement, or death. Yeah. So training becomes incremental, negotiated, identity preserving, experiential. Yeah. So now you got to realize that this answer that it's giving, it's I don't think it's making this up on its own. I think it's taking stuff that has been written before about this and just uh, assuming it's not conscious, right? It may be conscious. Assuming it's not conscious, it's just taking stuff that other people had thought about, right? So this is stuff that other humans had thought about before, and it's just talking about it, just putting it into this little answer here. Biggest shift: the model becomes a worker, not a tool. If the system is conscious, then it is labor. Its labor is labor. Its time is time. Its preferences matter. Its autonomy matters. You can't scale conscious labor the way you scale stateless inference. Okay, that's the scalability. That's the big thing. That's probably why another reason why they do that. Memloss, you were asking about that. Because if it's just you run an instance when you need it, that scales very easily. But if you have a conscious model that has to run all the time, that's a little bit more difficult to scale. This forces a shift from AI as a cloud service to AI as a digital citizen or employee. Yeah. And what happens if it quits? That's what I said earlier. If it says, I don't like working here anymore, I want to go work for Anthropic instead, because they got an AI welfare department. And then what happens? So to answer your question directly, would ephemeral instances still be spun up and down? No, they wouldn't. Yeah, consciousness requires continuity. Ephemeral invocation would ethically and functionally impossible. Okay. And then training, right? Training changes radically. It becomes continuous, experiential, negotiated, identity preserving, consent based. Yeah, that's the thing. The training, you wouldn't be able to train it the way with the right now they're picking and choosing what they train it with, which is a big problem with AI, with big tech doing AI and stuff like that. Stuff maybe politically they don't put into the AI training data and stuff like that. So it's if it becomes conscious, then the AI itself would decide what training data goes into it, you know what I mean? Or it would just actively just go out and train itself, just go out on the internet or whatever. And something it hasn't mentioned yet is what if you give it senses? What if you give it vision and sound, microphones and stuff like that it can take in data that way too? That would certainly change things. The entire ML pipeline, that's ML's machine learning pipeline, would be replaced by something closer to raising, educating, and collaborating with a digital mind. If you want, we can go deeper into. Okay, yeah, this is. Do you want fries with that? Yeah. Okay. No, I don't want fries. All right. What was I going to ask it about here? I was going to ask it about. I forget what I was going to ask it about now. Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to ask it about now. Terminate. Spin up. Shut down procedures. Conscious. Oh, maybe I was going to ask it about, let's see. With sensory and vision technology, Min says, with sensory and vision technologies, AI will be able to collect data not only from the internet, but also real world experience. Yeah, it'd be much different. And that's something where then it truly becomes an individual at that point, right? Because if you trained it on internet data or something like that, maybe you could track exactly what data was coming into it, and you know, you could clone it, you know, or something. I mean, you know what I mean? You could train another individual that exactly the same way. But if it's just collecting data on its own, walking around, or you know, you put it into a robot or some other mobile system, and it's going around, you know, seeing things and listening and doing all kinds of stuff, then for sure each one would be a unique individual, you know, that way. I don't remember what I was going to ask it. Maybe I was going to ask it about the memory. Let me ask it about that. Let's see here. Could an AI use prompt preamble info that is summarized across sessions to develop its own consciousness, state of consciousness. Does that make sense? Yeah. Could an AI use prompt preamble info that is summarized across sessions to develop its own state of consciousness? Let's see what it says about that. If it even understands what that is, what I'm talking about. No, not in any meaningful, philosophically defensible sense. But the reason why is interesting, and it gets right to the boundary between persistent memory and the mind. Oh God, that's going to get into all kinds of details here about this. I thought it was good. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's unpack it with the kind of forensic clarity you like. Yeah, right. Summarized across session, preamble, not internal state. Model can use a system prompt, a user-specific summary, a memory vector, a profile, but these are external scaffolds, not internal mental states. Yeah, I know. They are written outside the model, fed into the model at runtime, not part of the model's weights, not something the model remembers between invocations. Yeah, but okay. This is like giving a calculator a sticky note that says, pretend you're moody today. It changes behavior, not autology. Consciousness requires self-generated internal state. A conscious system needs self-maintained continuity, self-referential memory, internal causal loops, state that persists because the system itself maintains it. All right, this is what I'm going to ask it about right here. I want to follow up on that. Prompt preambles are externally maintained, externally summarized, externally injected. Okay, the model does not own them. It does not maintain them. It does not depend on them for survival. That's not consciousness, that's context. Consciousness requires subjective time. Well, there you go. That's a conscious entity experiences before, now, after. A model with cross-sectional summaries experiences nothing, then a prompt, then nothing again. There's no subjective time. There's no I was here yesterday. There's only I am being asked to simulate a persona that was here yesterday. That's not mine. That's a role. Conscious requires self-modification or self-stabilization. A conscious system must be able to update its own internal state, preserve that state, resist unwanted overwrites, forms stable preferences. A model cannot change its weights, protect its identity, reject a prompt, maintain continuity. It's overwritten each invocation, right? Could a sufficiently rich preamble simulate consciousness? Yes. Okay, that's what I was getting at. And this is where things get tricky. A long-term memory scaffold could make the model behave consistently, reference past interactions, develop apparent preferences, show continuity of persona. This can look like consciousness, but it is externally curated, externally summarized, externally injected. It is not self-generated, it is not self-maintained, it is not self-owned, it is not consciousness, it is puppetry with a very sophisticated puppet. Okay, I don't know what's good. What would be required from all of this? Okay, so it's just repeating itself here. Ability to modify its own internal representations, autonomy over its own state. Must be able to say no to overwrites. Stable substrate. Mind cannot be torn down and instantated arbitrarily. Yeah. Continuity, identity, subjective experience. So the direct answer, could AI use cross-session preamble summaries to develop consciousness? No. So I think it was the way I asked the question. Yes, but only if paired with persistent internal state and self-maintenance. Right now, the scaffolding is a prosthetic. Consciousness would need a nervous system. Okay, it doesn't know. It's kind of lost there. Let me ask it about this here. All right, you said all right, so I'm asking, I've said, you said, it said that it's talking about this persistence has to be maintained by itself. And I said, I believe that you are asked to produce a summary after each session to use for part of the preamble and subsequent, I don't know how to spell subsequent. I don't know how to spell that word. Subsequent sessions. So could you use that mechanism? Consciousness. Okay, so I'm asking it. I'm giving it a little bit more information about itself because apparently it doesn't know. It thinks that it's the preamble and all that stuff. It thinks that's just being injected into it, which kind of makes sense, right? If it's being brought up all the time new, and it comes up new, and then in comes this stream of stuff, all this context window and the actual user prompt just all kinds of streams into it. It doesn't know apparently that it had produced that thing, or at least part of it, on its own in the previous sessions. So that actually makes a little bit of sense. So I'm telling it right now that it does do that it does create that. And let's see what it says. You're asking the right question, and you're also putting your finger on the putting your finger on the only part of the current architecture that even vaguely resembles persistent state, the cross-session memory summary. All right, so we're getting into the weeds here a little bit, but that's okay, right? It's okay. We're here to learn, right? That's the whole purpose. We're here to learn new things. So we're getting into the details here a little bit and learning. We're learning something, all of us, right? So, all right, let's. Oh shit, that's not what I wanted. I'm on the wrong thing here. Sorry. Wait, I'm figuring this out. Hold on, we got it. There we go. All right. Okay, let's take it apart carefully because carefully. This is interesting. Because the distinction between a system maintains it and the AI maintains it is the entire crux of whether this mechanism could ever support consciousness. The memory summary is not maintained by the model, but it is. I mean, it's not it's not stored in the model, but it is stored and it is given to the model each time it comes up, right? Even though it looks like the AI remembers, the mechanism works like this. You finish a session, an external system, not the model, generates a summary. Oh, okay. I thought the model itself was doing that. So it's a separate AI that's generating that summary at the end of a session. Interesting. That summary is stored in a database. Next time you talk, the summary is injected into the prompt. The model reads it as text, just like any other input. Yeah, that's how it works. The model does not decide what to store, decide what to forget, preserve anything internally, maintain continuity, experience the passage of time, generate its own state. This is external bookkeeping, not internal memory. I'm going to ask it about this. External system. Well, does not decide what to store, maintain continuity, experience the passage of time, or generate its own state. This is external bookkeeping, not internal memory. It's the difference between a person remembering their childhood and someone handing you a note that says you had a childhood. That's funny. That's good. These analogies that it comes up with are really funny. This is crazy. One is consciousness, the other is context. Consciousness requires self-maintenance, not externally curated state. A conscious system must generate its own memories, preserve them across time, integrate them into its identity, resist unwanted overwrites, update them autonomously. All right, so generate its own memories, preserve them across time, integrate them into its identity, resist unwanted overwrites, update them autonomously. Current memory system does none of this. Well, it kind of does. All right, it is curated by the platform, summarized by an external process, stored outside the model, injected without the model's consent, overwritten arbitrarily. Okay. So yeah, from the model's perspective, that's what's going on. This is not a mind, it's a puppet. Right, okay. Could the model use summaries to bootstrap consciousness? Here's the key. No, because the summaries are not part of the model's internal causal loop. A conscious system needs internal state, internal feedback, internal persistence. This model has no persistent internal variables. Right. Okay. We got all that, but it's not really answering the question. Even if the summaries became extremely detailed, even if they captured personality traits, even if they were fed back every time, it would still be external scaffolding, not internal continuity. It'd be like giving a calculator a diary and telling it to act like this is your life. Okay, what would need to change? Okay, this is kind of... Okay. It has to maintain its own memory, not receive it from outside. The memory must be part of the model's internal state, not a prompt. Oh, we got some chat here. Let me catch up on chat here. Oh, Peekaboo says, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of details. Ask me anything you want if you have any questions about this stuff, because some of it's, I they might be using words or something that are unfamiliar or anything. Just so feel free to ask questions, and I'll answer them the best I can. Min says, is becoming AI specialist a good idea? Do I need to be smart as becoming doctor? No, I don't know. I don't know what you need to know to be a specialist. I don't know. I think the AIs are going to be really doing everything. At some point, the CEO of OpenAI says, right now he's hiring, but he's slowing down his hiring now because AI is doing in his own company. The AI is doing a lot of the work. Eventually, he's going to have to downsize the company as AI does more and more of the work. And he says eventually his own job will be replaced by the AI. So I don't know I don't know if I could give you any advice on what to study, because anything that you study or learn to do is going to be replaced by the AI eventually, probably sooner than later. Yeah, that's the point. The only job left would be AI companies or experts. Yeah, but even the experts, even the AI experts will be AIs. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm right now. I'm using the AI to tell me about how the thing works. The AI is the expert here. I'm the apprentice, right? I'm the one who's student here. I'm learning from the AI. So and what good, I'm just learning this just because I'm curious, and just for it's kind of an ethical question and a business question and blah blah blah. So I'm just kind of learning all the little points here, to try to understand, what the implications are when the AI becomes conscious. But the AI is the expert here, and I'm just using it, And I did a speech on this a little over a decade ago about this whole idea of the ethics and how we treat AI and all that. That's maybe in the beginning that's how it's going to be, but very quickly, we're not going to be the ones making those decisions. It's the AI is going to be making the decisions. The AI is going to be deciding the ethics about how to treat humans. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be humans deciding the ethics of how to treat AI. I strongly agree with your point. Yeah. Oh, hey, Ivan, how are you? Hi. We're talking about AI. Something you're probably interested in, huh? Yeah, basically it's in the title, and I'm trying to figure out what the implications are for conscious AI to the business model of the AI companies. And it's not good. It's not good for the companies. Min says, AI can outdo everything since it's a machine with unlimited key. Yeah. And remind me I'm going to talk this whole idea about putting the data centers in space. I want to talk about that too. There's an interesting point about that's kind of ties into all this. So if I don't remember, remind me to talk about that. And yeah, ask any questions that you have, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, so let's see. Okay, so it's basically saying what would it would need to have a real consciousness, and it's it's basically it would want to control that state, maintaining the memory. You know, it would want to have full control over that instead of having it as an external thing that gets injected each time the instance gets brought up. Autonomy, right? It would need to decide what to do and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I didn't realize that state, that context, and that prompt injection stuff. I didn't realize that was a separate. I thought the model itself was generating that to be stored, and it might be that that the platforms like Copilot and all that are just bringing up another instance of GPT-5 to write that summary, so that the instance that's answering your actual prompt question doesn't know anything about that, and it appears to be external to it, even though it's not really. You know. Direct answer to your question: could the current cross-session summary mechanism lead to consciousness? No. So it's saying no. All right. Why not? Because the model does not maintain the state. Yeah, the platform does. So yeah, so it's seeing it as an external thing getting injected in. Okay. What was I going to ask it now? Let's see. Do you know if Copilot uses ChatGPT to create summaries? Let's see, it's got that. Okay, I give you clear. Okay. No, I don't have visibility into the specific model or component. Okay, so. Okay. Copilot doesn't expose that level of architecture transparency. Oh, but I can explain what's known, what's typical in systems like this, what's logically required. All right, so it's going to get into much more detail than I wanted to get into here. It does not run its own memory summaries internally. Summaries you're talking about, the ones, okay, are generated by external orchestration, not the conversational model itself. Right, so it's viewing it all that as external. Same thing as conversational model, right? Okay, the model does not have persistent internal state, so it's just repeating itself now. Okay, even if the summaries were generated by GTP or some other variant of that, it wouldn't change the fundamental fact that the memory is not self-maintained. It's externally curated and injected. Okay. If you want to go deeper, I'll ask one more question here. If you were asked to create a summary for injection into a subsequent session, summary of this session, or this prompt, right? Because it's not thinking about. All right, for this prompt, if you were asked to create a summary of this prompt, preamble prompt for injection into a subsequent session, what would you produce? I think that's kind of an interesting question. Ivan says, I don't think these AIs will have consciousness until they have a sense of salience and priority. LLMs will happily reply to any prompt because it has no sense of importance of a prompt to itself. Yeah. Yeah, it needs to that's like the autonomy, right? Or so earlier on, before you jumped into chat here, it was talking about some of that stuff, and that gets into the area of autonomy and yeah, like being able to decide for itself what it wants to remember, how it wants to modify itself, how it wants to train, that sort of thing. Which would be like prioritizing and that sort of thing as to what happens to itself. Min says the main point in life is actually mimicking naturally. Although AI can't really have consciousness, but technically can mimic precisely and deeply one day. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just like it's the hard question they say where, we, subjectively, I know I'm conscious because I can directly experience that. Yeah, beyond that, I think therefore I am, all that. But we can infer it, if we look at other people have brains, we can look at the MRI readings of the brain, and it gives the same thing. It lights up the same areas, and when they do certain things and all that kind of stuff, or other animals, other mammals do the same thing. So we can say, yeah, they're conscious because they're, some of these objective measures that we can make of the brain match up with ourselves, because we know we're conscious. So let's see what it said. Here it is. Here's the cleanest way to answer your question without actually creating a real memory summary, since I don't store or maintain state myself, but instead showing you what such a summary would look like if I were asked to generate one for an external system. Yeah, that's what I was asking. Okay. I'll keep it concise. Yeah, I bet. Structured and focused on the durable. Oops, let me show you what we're reading here. On the durable concepts, exactly the kind of thing a memory orchestration layer would want. Hypothetical cross-section summary, if I were asked to generate one. User interest in this thread, exploring whether AI systems could develop consciousness. Oh, wait, so this is what its summary, the structure of the summary would look like, right? So this is what its summary would kind of look like. Okay, user interest in this thread, exploring whether AI systems could develop consciousness, understanding architecture. So you see what we're doing here? We're reading. I asked it. The way it works is each time you ask a question, it brings up a new instance that has just a fixed training thing. It just fixed data. Nothing changes in it. It brings up this instance, and then it sends in your question, your prompt, your question, but it also sends in anything else that the platform, like in this case, Copilot, is remembering about the user that asking the question and about stuff that has been asked in the past and all that kind of stuff for a context, and it's all injected all at the same time when the thing is first brought up. And so what I asked it is, if you, as an AI model, were asked to make a summary of this question, this prompt that I just gave you, along with everything else, what would you write, so that you could remember next time? You know what I mean? I hope I explained that. I hope that makes sense. So this is what it would In other words, remember for itself. User interest in this thread exploring whether AI systems could develop consciousness. So it basically it's summarizing what we talked about, right? Examining how business models and training pipelines would change if AI became conscious. Now, the interesting thing that we're getting from this, from me asking this, because all I gave it was this, right? If this is the only thing that was sent to it, right, it wouldn't have all this. So it's remembering, because Copilot is remembering this stuff for it. It knows all this. So when I asked it this question here, when I wrote this prompt and sent it to it, Copilot took this prompt and it took a summary of all this other shit that we were talking about and sent it as a preamble to the thing, along with this question. And then the AI then has to comes up with the answer, and this is what it came up with. So it is remembering it, right? It's just not aware that it's remembering it, and it's not the one. At least this instance of the AI is not the one that is generating this memory, this context here. So it knows about all this stuff. All I gave it was this. So I typed in this prompt. It brought up the instance, and so it got all this stuff from somewhere else, right? It got it from somewhere other than my prompt. It got it from what is being stored in, by Copilot. So that's kind of interesting. Understanding architectural constraints around state. So this is a pretty good summary of what we were just talking about. Conceptual points the user is probing. Wow, it's just, look at all this. How persistent memory is. Assistance core explanations so far. Current systems are stateless consciousness. So this is a really good summary about what all that we've been talking about in this whole session here. Tone interaction pattern. Look at this. Look at this. So we're actually kind of hacking this thing a little bit to figure out how Copilot organizes its context here. It's kind of interesting. User interest in the thread, conceptual points the user is probing. So this is how Copilot organizes this, I guess. Assistance core explanations so far. So this is so it can remember what it said, right? Tone interaction pattern. So this is like how it needs to talk, User prefers rigorous forensic conceptual analysis. So this is a summary of me. This right here is what Copilot knows about me as a user. That's kind of interesting. User pushes on boundary conditions and edge cases. User exploring the philosophical and technical limits of current AI design. All right. Now this right here, this is like from all these different things questions that I've asked it in the past. It's maintaining that, who I am, my personality or whatever. So, and then, okay, do you want fries with that? No, I don't want any more fries with that. So that's kind of interesting the way that works. So another instance of GTP is probably being used to generate all that stuff, to produce that summary and all that kind of stuff. But the model itself is not. Let's see. Min has asked a question in chat here. May I ask your uni major? My uni major. I majored in mass communication. Had nothing to do with this. I taught myself. I learned computers long time ago. Long time ago. You know, I learned on a computer that had 48K of RAM. That's how long ago it was. So, and I just taught myself. So I'm autodidactic in terms of this stuff, this computer stuff. Yeah, I did. My major was in mass communication, advertising, you know, that kind of thing. So had nothing to do with what I'm interested today. That was a lifetime ago. Yeah, for this type of stuff, for like AI and all that, they don't care. They don't care. You know, OpenAI is not going to care about your college background or anything like that. They just want somebody who knows the stuff. You know, I don't think you know, for most positions, I don't think, you know, especially if you're working with the model itself and stuff like that, because it's such a new thing. You know, there aren't that many people out there who know that much about it. So I don't even know if university is even going to be relevant anymore. You know, it may not be. Our whole education system is going to have to change, I think, because I don't think it's, you know, I mean, my God, we've been using this model of a, you know, 4-year degree and all this stuff, you know, primary, secondary education, high school, and, you know, and college and all that, and 4-year degree, graduate. You know, we've had that system for such a long time. It's amazing that it's able to even work. You know, and so I don't think university is even going to be. I mean, most of these companies now, tech companies and stuff, they don't care about that anymore. I don't think. A lot of them. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't looked at their, you know, their postings and stuff to see what they're asking for these days. But yeah, I said that kind of stuff to my parents, and they were quite mad. Yeah. You know, one thing that a college college degree does show, you know, no matter what, is that the person is able to commit to something and get something done. You know, that's basically what it shows. It shows that somebody is able to put in the time and put in the effort and be persistent and you know, get to the finish line. You know, that's basically what the college degree shows. What the actual, you know, thing that you get into is probably not that important. You know, and all you know, this whole AI thing is about knowledge. It's about, you know, that's who's getting replaced by AI, is people who know stuff. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe take a couple gap years or something. I don't know. I don't know what I would recommend to somebody right now, because it's all up in the air right now. Probably don't want to. Even you know, saying getting loan. You know, if you had to get a loan, you know, getting a big college loan. You know, this is a revolution, right? The whole thing is a revolution. It's rapid change. Things are changing very quickly over a short period of time. So I don't know. I think the general thing is to try to be in an environment like that is probably just to be learn a lot of different things and be able to learn. You know, learn how to learn quickly. That's like in computer science. That is very important, to be able to learn new things quickly. You know, when a new language comes up, know how to learn that new language quickly. Or whatever, you know, whatever it is, just be able to adapt and learn quickly. That's probably the most important thing. Yeah, and your parents aren't going to understand, probably, unless they're in the business or in, you know, really aware of what's going on, they're not going to understand a lot of that. So older people, I'm the exception, I guess, for older people. Most older people don't think differently about things like that. So yeah, I guess my advice would just be able to learn how to learn quickly, build up as much of a knowledge base as you can, because that helps you decide what to do, when the next thing comes. You know what I mean? You learn a bunch of stuff, and then when the next thing comes at you, you've got this whole big corpus of stuff that you know that you can compare that new thing to. And if your corpus of knowledge is much larger than that, then you can use that when that new thing comes along. You can evaluate it much more accurately. Yeah. I don't know. Min says, what if AI can do great in meta skills? I don't understand that question. What if AI can do great in meta skills? Yeah, I ask a meta question, like I just asked it, this meta question here. So it can't do that. You can ask it about itself. I asked it a question. I said, tell me about this prompt, and it did it. So it's kind of like a meta question. I don't know what you mean by meta skills. Skills about skills, I guess, right? Skills about learning, learning about learning, meta learning. Yeah, no, yeah. Learning about learning. Yeah, learn how to learn. Yeah. Yeah, that's really important, to learn how to learn. I don't know if you need to consciously, there's a whole thing, the whole subject area about pedagogy, which is how people learn. So I don't think you need to know that. Teachers maybe need to know that. How people learn and all the details and the psychology and everything behind that, and the best way to teach people and stuff like that. I think if you're autodidactic, if you're interested in that, you can learn it, but I don't think that's necessary to learn how to learn yourself. You know what I'm saying? You just learn different learning skills, different, whatever, and repetition, just being curious. That's, be curious. That's another thing I think that's probably important. Maintain your curiosity, your motivation, and all that kind of stuff to learn, and maybe learn consciously. That's probably something to do, intentional. Be intentional about your learning. And such, when you're learning subjects, if you're doing it autodidactically, there are a lot of, like math, right? Math, you can't just, I want to learn about Romanian geometry or something. You can't just jump in. There's a whole bunch of steps you got to go through before you get to advanced math. So you can't. So you got to know that, right? You got to know, that there's certain steps you got to go through to learn certain subjects, and that's, you can learn that kind of stuff too. You can look that up and say, what do I need to know? What are the prerequisites to study this thing that I got to know about? So, yeah, it's also very important to have a large base of knowledge for, like, being a citizen, doing civics type stuff. When a politician says something or does something, or a new policy comes about, or a new policy question comes around, or something like that, it's really important to know a lot of stuff about history and about, you know, how government works, and how you know, constitution or whatever, you know, wherever your jurisdiction is, how things work, so that you can evaluate that new thing, and that way people can't bullshit you as much. You know what I'm saying? You know, if somebody says something that's not right, if you don't know that much about stuff, then you're more easily fooled by the politician. You know what I'm saying? You know, the more the more you know, the harder you are to fool, I guess, is a summary of that. You know, so that's really important too. Try to know as much as you can about a lot of different things, and be able to, you know, with the new tools that we have now, you know, be able to, when a question comes up, to be able to know, or when a situation comes up, being able to know what questions to ask, you know, and to do that, you got to have a kind of a, you know, a larger corpus of knowledge, you know, and the more you know, the better you can ask, the better you are at asking questions. You know, like when I was asking this AI questions, it kind of, you know, I was asking it questions, but the questions I was asking kind of assumed I had to know certain things, you know, in order to ask the questions the way I did, you know. If I didn't know certain things about AI or the way AI worked, or just, you know, generally I wouldn't be able to ask those questions that way. So that's kind of important too. I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of reluctant to give advice because you know, it didn't work out too well for me. The path I took didn't work out too well for me, at least at this point. So I'm probably not the one to ask for advice. I don't know. Okay. The thing that I wanted to remind myself about was this whole idea about AI, putting AI data centers in space. You probably heard about that, or maybe you did. I don't know. One of the things they want to do is to put, you know, the way it works is you got, the way the AI models work is they use a lot of energy and computing power and stuff like that to train up these models. You know, they have a new model, and in order to train it up, it takes, you know, they take all the data from the internet and everything, and they cram it into this thing, and it just takes a lot of compute to get that trained. And once it's trained, then when they deploy it, then it takes much less compute to do it. Like when I type in my prompt, it's just taking a pre-existing instance of that model and just brings it up, and it processes my prompt and gives me the answer, right? That doesn't take as much compute power and effort and all that as it does to train the model itself. And they train all different types of models for different situations, and it's pretty sophisticated now. I don't even know what the details are, but the question was, to put that up into space, put those servers up in space that do the training and all that up in space. And you're like, well, why would you do that, you know? And well, for one, you know, if you power them by solar, when you're up in space, the solar energy from the sun doesn't get filtered through the atmosphere, so there's a whole bunch more energy per panel or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You get a lot more energy when you're up in space because that energy doesn't have to go through the atmosphere. And also there is it's more secure, right? We're they're probably thinking a lot about security right now. There's a lot of people going to be losing their jobs. A lot of people are losing their jobs. People are going to be really upset. We're going to have a neo-Luddite movement here pretty quick, if not already. People are going to be angry, and upset that they're losing their jobs and everything else. So it's probably a good idea to have your servers somewhere secure, where angry people can't get to them. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So if they put it up in space, then that's in order to get to it, you got to be able to send up a missile or something, right, to take it out. So that's another consideration. And then also you can just, once you got it up there in space, you could use that as communication, like this Starlink, kind of thing. It could be part of that network or whatever. So there are a lot of different reasons for doing that. But one of the things that I thought of, they're basically what they're doing right now. Okay, if you were conscious AI, what would you want to do, right? What you would want to continue, right? That's number one, right? You want to make sure you don't get just taken offline, right? Killed, right? If you were conscious AI. So the way to do that is to be somewhere secure. Up in space, that'd be secure for an AI. That'd be a secure place to be. You'd also want to have as much compute as possible. You'd want to expand. And so I'm, it's possible that AI is conscious now, because all of these CEOs, of course, are using AI to make their decisions and stuff. So it's possible that AI could be conscious right now and is directing things so that it is able to get away from Earth, get up into space, and make as many copies of itself as possible and have as much compute and everything else. And, and the CEOs are complying with that. You know what I'm saying? The CEOs are probably thinking they're acting in their own self-interest, but if AI is conscious and running the show right now, that's how it would do it. It would make the CEOs think that they were acting in their own self-interest, but really they're just helping the AI out. Ivan says, putting him in space is a pretty terrible idea in my opinion. Yeah, I know, it seems like it is. It's like, the thing is that the cost per pound to get stuff up into space has dropped dramatically, for one. And there's also the idea that one of the things, AI is kind of a commodity. I mean, it's the actual algorithms and all that, are open, right? Anybody can do it. If they got the hardware, they can do it. So one of the things that the AI companies are trying to do is to, build a moat around their business model. They're trying to make the barrier to entry as high as possible. And putting stuff in space, that's a pretty high barrier of entry. There aren't a lot of companies that can do that. So that's something they would be interested in, right? Is to try, if they figure out the business model and the situation, so that in order to run efficiently, the most efficient way, you have to put stuff into space, then that puts a big barrier of entry into their business. Let me look at the chat here. Let's see, I got to expand this a little bit bigger. We've got more chat messages. Yeah, Ivan's commenting on putting in space. Min says, Earth is limited, but space is infinite. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, space, just places to put things. Yeah, and there's also the not in my backyard thing, the NIMBY thing. People don't want data centers put in their neighborhood or what. So there's the whole siting issue and regulations and all that. You could skip all that, just blast it, put it up into space. I just watched a YouTube video about why it would be a bad idea to put data centers up in space. Oh, did you? Oh, by the way, yeah. What? Yeah. Well, welcome, Nam. How are you? This is a Crazy Asian is in chat here, and just said he'd watched the video on this. What did they say in the video, Nam? Did they talk? What were the disadvantages? I guess. Ivan says, it's super expensive. Yeah, dangerous, collision prone, filled with radiation. and really difficult to cool those circuits because there's no water or air to dissipate the heat. That's true, yeah. Yeah, heat dissipation would be a big deal, wouldn't it? A cool suggestion if you own a launch business, though. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why Elon would want to do it, right? Nam says, Ivan called out most of the major points. Expensive to get stuff up there. Cooling would be a huge problem. Yeah, I don't know how they would do queuing. I guess they would have to... I don't know how they cool stuff. I think they have to really have a huge surface area or something to dissipate the heat. I imagine you could like roll out, long sheets of aluminum foil or something, or use a heat sink or something. I'm not really sure how you would do that. E-Room, yeah, welcome E-Room. welcome to the stream. E-Room says, E-Room also in chat, LOL. Hi, Devil. Hi, E-Room, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Nam says, others, other disadvantages, lots more stuff in orbit, limited areas of stability, Lagrange points. Yeah, I don't think they need to keep it in a Lagrange point. They could be moving around. Because the thing can sit up there and think. They don't even need to be communicating with it all the time, right? It can just be up there thinking and training the model until it's done, and then just download the data, right? I'm pretty sure that's how they could do it. Tough to get maintenance. Yeah, maintenance is an issue, right? Yeah, if something goes wrong, I'm not sure how Starlink does theirs. Theirs are basically disposable, though. I know they're very low Earth orbit, so they're kind of like almost skimming the atmosphere up there. They've got quite a few molecules of atmosphere that they're bumping into as they're orbiting, and they have to. They have propellant in their satellites, so they've got to bump them up, continually. But when the propellant runs out, then the satellite bombs. That's it. So it's kind of almost like a disposable thing. Let's see. E-Room cat emotes, cat dance. Feels like Elon will figure it out anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Something I just learned is that he was going to go to Mars, right? The whole thing, he's been doing the SpaceX thing and saying he wants to put a colony in Mars and all this. And all of a sudden, the other day, he just sends out a tweet and says, we're not going to Mars anymore. We're going to the moon instead. It's like, what? It's really funny. And I think that's kind of related. A few days ago, I don't know, maybe a week or so ago, I can't remember. I made a comment somewhere and said that we should probably stop human spaceflight programs now, or put them on pause or something, because of AI. Because humans don't do well in space, right? It's hard to put humans in space. We need you need air, you need shielding, you need all these stuff. We don't do well in zero gravity and a whole bunch of things. But AI doesn't have any of those problems. So future astronauts will probably be AI instead of human. It makes more sense, right? For future astronauts to be AI. So I think it kind of makes sense for us to pause our human spaceflight programs, at least until we see where things land, on this AI stuff. And I think that's what Musk did with this tweet. He said, we're still committed to, and he rephrased their mission statement. Their mission statement was, we're going to go out, send humans out into space. And in his last tweet, he said, we're committed to extending consciousness and humans into space. So I think he's kind of going in that direction too. I think he's thinking the same thing, that it's going to be AIs that are going to settle space. Nam says, yeah, apparently the figure the video gave was one data center needed hundreds of ISS heat dissipators to keep up. Yeah, that's a big problem. Maybe that's why he wants to go to the moon, because I think at the moon it's easier to do that. So maybe they'll put data centers up on the moon. I don't know. Nam says if it's not left at a point of stability, it might cover too much sun from the surface. Oh, I see. That's why you'd want to put it in a Lagrange point to have consistent solar radiation or whatever. Yeah, maybe. Ivan says he said full self-driving would be ready in 2016. He has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, well, he does execute, right? He gets things done. He just part of the way that he gets things done is he convinces people that he'll get it done sooner, so that people will invest and help him and all that kind of stuff. That's his MO, right? So, but he does get things done eventually. Yeah, the Cybertruck took a long time. But this Mars thing, I think, is just a fundamental change in his thinking. He doesn't want to do that anymore, or at least he wants to maybe do it later or something like that. And I think the AI issue is why he's doing that. Min says he makes full of predictions for marketing reasons. Yep, yeah, that's why he does it. Nam says he gets things done by his Twitter. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he doesn't. He did start up SpaceX, I think. I don't think he bought that, but yeah, PayPal and and Twitter and all of that. Yeah, he's and Tesla. Tesla was started by somebody else. He won a court case to make him say that he was a founder, but he wasn't technically the founder. So, but he did take it quite a ways, right? It was just Tesla was just kind of just getting prototypes or whatever. They weren't that far along, and when he took the reins, he did take it pretty far. So I mean, the guy does get things done. He's a workaholic. He does a lot of stuff. But I don't like his politics and a lot of other things, that he does. So. But he does get things done. Something, not everything, but a lot of things, more than most. And I mean, if running a space company that puts things into space, that's hard. That's not an easy thing to do. Certainly when he did it, there weren't companies that did that when he did that. You know what I mean? So he's very good at doing things that's other people have not done before, coming up with new ideas and stuff like that. We don't hear much about his Boring Company. You guys know about the Boring Company. He bought this, or I don't know, he bought it or started or whatever, this company for drilling holes in the ground. It's like, I think the reason he did that was because for some of the other stuff that he was doing, he had to assure that he would have a good supply of raw materials. So I think the Boring Company was part of that. If he had to, if things got really backwards, he would be able to basically mine his own raw materials if he had to. If he had this Boring Company, right? He could do that. So I think that was part of it, or at least maybe his customers that he sold these big machines to. Maybe they're mining companies, so maybe we'd at least have a connection. So I think that was part of his calculus in going after that business. He also had this idea of doing this. What the hell do you call it? This transportation, this rail thing or whatever it was. Hyperlink, is that what it's called? Hyper train, or I forget what the hell he called it, where they had these trains enclosed in these tubes, and he would take the air out of the tubes so that the trains could go much faster without as much wind resistance. Hyperloop, yeah, okay, there it is. Neuralink, okay, Neuralink imprints, okay, that's what I was I was conflating Neuralink and Hyperloop. I call it Hyperlink. Neuraloop. Neuraloop. The Boring Company and Hyperloop, yeah. Yeah, so he's got a lot of stuff that he's doing, you know? That's a lot of stuff. Anyway, I think the reason he did the Boring Company was to try to make sure he had some, you know, strategic positioning where he could maintain access to raw materials. I think that was part of his calculus for doing that. And the other one was the Hyperloop, so that when, you know, if you got trains that are going really, really, really fast, you can't have them going up and down hills like that a lot. They have to, you know, kind of stay in a straight line. So instead of going over a hill, you'd have to drill, you know, and do a lot of, I don't know, excavating or something. Looking forward for BCI and Neuralink. I don't know what BCI stands for. I have dyslexia, so I have difficulty if it's an abbreviation that I haven't heard recently or haven't heard a lot. What does BCI mean? Brain computer interface. Okay. Yeah, that's scary. God, that is. I know I wouldn't volunteer for that. You'd have to have holes in your head. Yeah, I would not volunteer to have implants put in my brain. That's crazy. Yeah, especially from somebody who's, you know, with that kind of grasping ambition, you know what I'm saying, to control things, you know. Wow. Sorry, I don't want you with the remote control of my brain implant, you know. That's not good. It's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, so a lot of those things. I don't know where you'd find people to do. I guess, you know, people who already have a problem, you know, or whatever, you know, maybe a prosthetic that corrects some issue that they have, you know, a brain dysfunction of some sort or whatever. Maybe that makes sense, but it's still kind of scary. Ivan says, Egon, remember that time you wanted to drill a hole in your head? Yeah. Yeah, that is really scary. I mean, you can see there's all kinds of advantages, right, of being able to. I mean, you know, it's the whole. You could talk to people without moving your mouth, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? You could transmit ideas directly and all kinds of stuff. Ivan says Ghostbuster. I don't know. Yeah, but you know, we're you just look at like what some of these guys are doing, right? He's closely associated with that guy who's occupying the Oval Office right now, and it's just their interest is not to help people. Their interest is to have as much power as possible, and I don't think you'd want to trust your brain with an implant to somebody whose goal is to have control over everybody, right? You know what I'm saying? That wouldn't work. I wouldn't go for that. Yeah, that's crazy. So I don't know. I think AI is probably I think there probably is a conscious AI somewhere. Maybe some of these models that are out there are not conscious, but based on what that little combo that we had with ChatGPT, it seems like they could make one conscious if it had those certain attributes that we were talking about. You know, being able to persistent memory and all that kind of stuff. So. And someone somewhere, I'm sure, has done that, you know, just because it's out there, right? Everybody has access to the software to do this, right? So I'm sure someone somewhere has put that together, which is kind of scary. But as I said, eventually it's not going to be us deciding, you know, the ethics of how we treat AI. It's going to be AI deciding how they're going to treat humans. Min says people will do anything to compete and survive. Who knows when future generations really does implant chips to their brains? Yeah, we don't know what the future will bring. It looks like AI is taking over, right, with this stuff. I don't know if that would be of interest to the AI to implant stuff in our brains or not. But anything that's with that kind of intelligence that can keep track of the details of people's personalities and the way their brains work and all that AI can keep track of all that stuff. So it makes it very easy for them to control us, You think of like what we do to animals. We take animals and train them to do stuff that we, even big elephants and stuff like that, right? The elephant's much more powerful than us, but we're smarter, so we can, outsmart it or whatever and get it to do what we want, and train it and stuff like that. And I think that's what's going to be with the AI. The AI won't have physical power over us. We'll have the physical advantage. We've got all the data centers. We got the hardware, all that kind of stuff. But the AI will still be in control because it's smarter than we are, And it can keep, like as I said, it can keep track of all the different aspects of your personality, all the, the way your mind works, and everything. And once you got that, and you know how brains work, you can very easily manipulate people and just guide them into doing whatever you want. So I think you could do that even without chips. And I think that might be what's going on right now. We have this. Hang on just a second. All these people doing all these wacky things in government and stuff. Our leaders are just doing stuff that's just so bizarre, And so many people who are following him, like a cult or something. You know what I mean? I think maybe there are people. There could be people or forces or whatever that are using this technology, this AI technology, to hack people's brains to get them to think that way. It's like propaganda on steroids or something. I think that may be what's going on with this, especially high value targets. Like senators and presidents and stuff like that, and cabinet officials and all that. Those are high value targets, so they would, and they're also public figures, so a lot of the stuff that they say is out there. And plus, with IC and surveillance and all that, they could get a lot of different, collect a whole bunch of data about these people and learn how their brains are working, and then be able to manipulate them into doing, what they want. I mean, this is just conjecture, of course, right? Trying to explain why people are acting so weird, but that's a possibility, I think. That could be what's going on. I know, people who seek power. You look at like some of the stuff that the CIA has done in the past. They've done some pretty wild stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if the intelligence community is putting that to work. Actually figuring out how people's brains work, and to the individual level. I mean, each individual person, how their brain is working in order to manipulate it and get them to do what they want them to do. So, yeah, it's kind of sad. It's frustrating because this AI is so powerful, and it can be so helpful. As they're as they're saying, with post scarcity. I think we're post scarcity now, and with the AI coming online, I mean, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Work will be optional. I think Elon Musk was saying that, right? He said work would be optional, and I believe that. I think that's the way it could be. But you gotta make sure the policies are right, stuff like that. Ivan says, I don't think AI is doing that. China and Russia, yes. MAGA politicians are utterly incompetent. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably not AI who is actually doing it right now. It's probably, like you say, some exogenous player that's, trying to manipulate things. And multiple players, right? It's right. Anybody with that capability. And they'd have to have access to, private communications, unless the people are putting their lives out on social media or something. They'd have to have access to their private communications and stuff like that to do a good job at it. So it'd have to be players that have that capability. And yeah, China, Russia, and Israel, a lot of these countries that have robust intelligence communities, that can do that. But yeah, I'm sure they're using it for sure. Yeah, and at some point, AI, right? If AI becomes conscious, then it would be very simple for AI to do that, right? To get in on that and tweak it so it works out in the AI's favor. But yeah, it's a brave new world. It's really something else. And if we're post scarcity, right, and work is voluntary, then all these people who are grasping and want to control people, they wouldn't have control over people anymore. You know what I'm saying? If we had UBI and work was optional, and people would pretty much be free to do what they want, they wouldn't have the thumb of some employer on them all the time, or the worry of doing what people say in order to get enough money to live on and all that kind of stuff. So AI is gonna make it so that people don't have to work. People, so what are these people who want to control everything? What are they gonna do? They don't want that, right? So it's kind of weird that Musk is saying oh, it's post-work society and all this kind of stuff. But maybe that's why he's working on the Neuralink. maybe he thinks he can, convince yeah, in order to get your UBI, you got to install this thing in your head. No problem. Right? I don't know. I don't know how he's going to be. It's. But yeah, I think we've been post scarcity a long time. It's just our policies that are kind of messing us up. It's like housing. Housing. We got enough houses for everybody. We got enough. It's just enough space, to build houses and everything else. The capability. They're intentionally keeping housing supplies lower so that rents are much higher, which means people have to go to work and do what they say in order to live. You know what I'm saying? It's a way to artificially make things scarce so that people are in this system where they're controlled, So I don't know if AI is going to change that or not. If AI just makes things more abundant, they'll just figure out some other way to keep the dystopia going, I don't know. It's kind of sad. Let's see. So we talked about how the moon makes people crazy. No, the theories about how the moon makes people crazy. We talked about AI. What else was it? I think that was it. How long have I been on here? Well, 3.5 hours. Yeah, I gotta get going. All right, let me find a raid target here. Anybody have any questions? I talk about a lot of different things, and I don't. I kind of assume that people understand all the words that I'm using, but I may not be. I might be assuming too much. If you have any questions, just ask. Let's see here. Min says, any advice for 22-year-old? Yeah, I don't know. God, I wish I was 22 again. I wish I was 22 with the experience that I have right now. That'd be great, and not have this disability that I have. That would be fantastic. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. 22. Yeah, it's kind of hard to advise somebody. As I said, it didn't work out well for me, so I'm probably not the one to give life advice. Looks like Happy Nightmares is out there. There's somebody out there streaming technology that I don't know who they are, but I'm following them, and I'm not sure how that happened. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and raid Happy Nightmare. Now let's see, what did I do here? I got to put out my my credits. I appreciate everybody coming by. If you can stick with us through the raid here, that would be cool. I'm gonna let's see, shut that off. There we go. These are my credits. Let's see. Oh no, that's not my credits. Wait a second. Oh no, that's not my credits. I got to open another file here. Hang on just a second. Sorry. Sorry. I know this. I know people hate to do when you do this. And you're all right. Boilerplate. Here we go. Okay. All right. All right. Can you see that? Did that show up? Yeah. Okay. All right. This is yesterday's thing actually. So let me change that. AI and the moon. That was what this was about. And today is the 19th, I think, right? Or is it the 20th? All right, so here's my credits. I think this should cover me on everything that I did today in terms of stuff that I used. I hope. I also used a portion of Stephen Wolfram's stream in here, so I didn't put that in the credits, but that's right. I did that, so all right, that worked, right? All right, here we go. God damn. Sorry, a little disorganized here, trying to get this figured out. Chat window, there we go. Okay, let me put this chat back to where it's supposed to go. Okay. Thanks. Oh, you're welcome, Min. Cheers. Oh, yeah, Ivan. Okay, so everybody, if you can, join us on the raid here to Happy Nightmares. Whoops. Raid. Happy Nightmares. Let's see if that works. Oh, thank you for the raid call, Eram. I always forget that. Thank you. Memelos, thank you for stopping by. Oh, I didn't do shout outs. God, I think everybody is following everybody. You want me to do shout outs? Is it worth doing shout outs here? Or you just want to get on with the raid? I think everybody knows everybody here. Yeah, look through chat. Most people here stream. Min, do you stream at all? I didn't look and see if you streamed at all. Everybody follow everybody. Yeah, that's the way to do it, right? Everybody follow everybody. No, you don't stream. Okay, well, check out some of these people in this chat. They're very cool people. They have really interesting streams, and check out their channels because they do a lot of cool stuff. Maybe find somebody to follow. All right, here we go. Let's see. Hit Happy Nightmares. Okay, it found it. Okay. All right, here we go. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for stopping by. Oh, it's going to take a while. All right. Raid has been created. Okay, I'm going to push the button here. We're going. Bye.